It came from near this hill, probably just over the other side. Silas paused to untie the strap of his pistol and tucked his head down, creeping forward. Down below he spotted a house and something that resembled a figure on the ground outside it. He remained still for 10 more minutes, checking for any movement around him. The sun was coming up in the clear Texas sky, and he realized he needed to see if there was anything he could do. His mules and wagon were waiting back at camp, and today was when he needed to go to Dogtown for supplies. Although what happened last night was not his problem, in this part of Texas, everyone could be considered a neighbor. So, despite the risks, he felt he should investigate before moving on. His rifle was ready with plenty of cartridges, and he thought he could handle any potential threats. He didn't think anyone dangerous was around, but he still moved cautiously, watching closely for any signs of life. When he reached the area near the house, he was fairly sure it was empty. Still, he needed to be careful. He put his pistol in its holster, held his rifle in his left hand, and made his way to the barn. The big doors were open, but he noticed a side door that had not been touched. Entering from the side would keep him safer if there was trouble. With a quick move, he opened the door and crouched as he stepped inside. He moved silently along the wall, holding his pistol ready, but it was quiet. After a careful search of the barn and loft, he figured out the best way to get into the house. Choosing the back way offered more cover, so that's what he did. Silas ran across the open space and entered through the back door. Inside, he checked each room, his pistol drawn. In one of the larger bedrooms, he found a closet filled with clothes for both a man and a woman, and in another room, there were clothes for a girl. The house, like the barn, was well built and very clean. The kitchen was well stocked, and the rooms were nicely decorated. One wall of the main room had a built-in bookshelf filled with many books. Some he had read, but many more he had not. He looked at the books with a fondness. He loved stories and the ideas they contained. Silas realized he was in a home filled with learning and culture, but he only saw one person outside, and it was a man. Staying low to avoid being seen, he quietly moved from window to window, finally standing beside the open door. Noticing nothing unusual, he stepped out onto the porch, looked around carefully, and walked over to the man. As he approached, it was clear the man was young and fit, even in rest. A gun lay by his side. Silas imagined what the man must have faced. The ground showed signs of disturbance, and 3 horses were standing about 810 feet apart. This was not a friendly way to approach a home, especially at night. The man seemed to have been attacked by all 3, yet the gun beside him had not been fired. Thinking back, Silas wondered why the man chose to go outside with a gun against 3 riders who were too spread out for the weapon to be useful. It seemed odd, especially with a family inside. Unable to leave the man there, Silas went to the barn and found a shovel. He chose a spot under a large pecan tree at the edge of the clearing and leaned his rifle against a nearby bush. He rolled up his sleeves and began to dig in the soft ground. After digging 4 feet down, he found a canvas in the barn, wrapped the man gently in it, and pulled him to the grave. Just before he reached the spot, he noticed something white in the nearby brush that wasn't there before. Ignoring it for the moment, he lined the body up with the grave, turned slightly, and wiped his forehead. This movement allowed him to look at the spot where he saw the white object. "Come out, or I will start shooting." The figure shrank further under the bush, and Silas realized it might be the missing girl. With his pistol ready, he moved quickly toward the figure and called out, "I know I am not one of them. I need to see you now, or I'll have to shoot. You have 3 seconds. 1, 2. The figure stood up and stepped out from behind the bush. "Don't shoot, I'm unarmed." It was the girl whose clothes he had seen inside the house. She looked to be around 11 or 12 years old, with a thin frame, shoulder-length wavy red hair with golden highlights, and eyes that were a mix of blue and green. She wore a nightgown and sandals. "What's your name, young girl?" Silas asked. "Lily Thompson," she replied sharply. "What's yours, young boy?" He frowned at her attitude but introduced himself as Silas Carr, explaining he came from a settlement to the west. "I was on my way to town for supplies and camped in the valley along Turkey Creek last night. After I went to sleep, I heard shouting and some noise. It was dark, so I waited until this morning to see what was going on. When I went looking, I found this man's body, but no one else. I searched the place and found out a woman and a young girl lived here too, but since I didn't see them, I decided to bury your father before looking for you and your mother." He paused and added, "As you can see, I'm not one of them, or I wouldn't be burying the dead." Lily seemed to believe him and stepped closer without fear. He noticed that she was quite pretty, even though she looked a bit dirty and thin. She was taller than he expected, and her face showed determination. "We need to bury Daddy and then go find my mom. I'll change into my riding clothes, then I'll get our Bible so we can say some prayers for him," she said firmly. Silas was surprised by her confidence. It felt strange that she was telling him what to do. She acted like he was a hired helper instead of someone trying to help her. Still, her plan matched what he was thinking, so he kept quiet. "Get ready. We'll hold the service and then we can figure out what to do next," he said, trying to take charge. She made a face and went inside. He took that time to find 2 short ropes. He looped them around the man's body, carefully securing them, and laid the ends on the ground. When she returned, she was dressed in jeans, a tan shirt, a jacket, and riding boots, and she carried a large Bible. "Please lower my father's body into the grave, Silas," she asked seriously. She seemed to like giving orders, but he took off his hat in respect, picked up the ropes, and gently lowered her father's body into the shallow grave. He was about 5'8" inches and weighed around 150 pounds. Silas, at 5'10" inches and 160 pounds, found it challenging to lower the body slowly and carefully. But he did what was needed, while Lily read from the Bible. After reading the 23rd Psalm, she continued with Ecclesiastes. "The dust goes back to the ground and the spirit goes back to God, as it says in Ecclesiastes, 'There is a time for everything and a purpose for every season. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to gather what was planted, a time to heal and a time to fix what is broken, a time to cry and a time to smile, a time to feel sad and a time to be joyful, a time to let go of stones and a time to collect them, a time to hug and a time to hold back, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to let go, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to be quiet and a time to speak up, a time to love and a time to dislike, a time for conflict and a time for peace." Lily stressed a time to dislike, a time for conflict, and her expression showed she meant it. She continued her prayer. "Dear Father, we will always remember and honor you. You were a wonderful man, a great husband, and the best father a daughter could ever have. We will hold on to your memory forever. Father, the Lord has sent help as he promised in Romans 13:4, for he is a servant of God for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not carry the sword for nothing. He is a servant of God, avenging wrongdoing. Silas will help me find my mother, your loving wife, and bring her home. He will make sure those who harmed you and took mother face justice, as the scriptures say. Join me in the Lord's Prayer, Silas." Silas was a bit taken aback by Lily's strong words and the service she led. He prayed and then began filling in the grave. He placed an old door he found in the barn over the dirt and used 2 logs to secure it. "We will build a proper memorial later, but right now we need to find those men who took your mother." Lily whistled, and a blue roan mare came out from the brush near the creek. The horse hesitated at the sight of Silas, but Lily called, "Come, Blue!" and the mare followed her to the barn. Silas brought his horse down from the hill, gave him some water, and checked that his rifle and pistol were clean after crawling around. Lily rode Blue out of the barn, carrying an old Winchester rifle in a scabbard on the saddle and a shotgun across her lap. "Let's go. I think I know where they took her. Dad and I found a hidden campsite off the road to Dogtown a few weeks ago, and it looked like it was used often. I believe they're there." She urged her horse down the trail at a fast pace without checking if Silas was following. Silas shook his head at her daring spirit and hurried to catch up with her. He wasn't sure if her guess was right or wrong, but since she was her mother, she must have felt sure enough to move on without checking for signs. They rode quickly for about 30 minutes until she raised her hand and slowed her horse to a walk. Moments later, she dismounted and tied her horse to a mesquite tree. He did the same. "The campsite is just ahead. We'll be right on them when we reach the top of this hill," she said. Silas replied quietly. "We don't want to be together so they can't easily target us. You head straight ahead and I'll go around to the right. This way we can approach from two sides. Wait for my signal before you act." She gave him a puzzled look but moved forward. Silas circled around the back of the hill to find a large mesquite tree that would keep him hidden while giving him a clear view. He looked for the campsite for the first time. He spotted 3 men. 2 were lounging against a fallen tree, drinking coffee and chatting. They were facing him. The 3rd man was grappling with a woman who was clearly struggling and upset. "Maybe she doesn't want you as much as you thought. She's putting up quite a fight for someone who called for help." One man laughed. Silas watched as the man hit the woman. She covered her cheek and shouted, "You hurt me!" His friends laughed even more, with one saying, "So even hurting her husband for her wasn't enough of a gift? You told us she practically begged you for help last week. Why doesn't she just give in if she wants you so badly? You've already hit her 3 times, and she's still fighting." "Come help me hold her arms," the man yelled. The woman kneed him and broke free, running into the bushes. He screamed after her, "I'm going to get you." He pulled out his gun and fired at her, but missed. He tried to aim again, but before he could pull the trigger, 2 shots rang out. He fell back and lost his balance. His gun went off without aiming, and he fell to the ground. Silas quickly focused on the other 2 men. They jumped up, drew their guns, and each fired at the direction of the shots. Silas took aim and shot the man targeting him, hitting him in the chest, causing him to fall. The other man shot at Lily and then tried firing at Silas before fleeing into the bushes. Silas shot him in the side before he could escape. The man stumbled and then lay still. Silas stayed in his position, watching for any movements. But the bullets did their job. All 3 men fell and stayed down. He stayed still for a moment, then started down the hill. Lily was running down the slope, holding a rifle and shouting, "Mama, Mama, are you okay?" Her wildness made Silas rush toward them too. He glanced at the 2 men he had shot, hoping they were really gone and not just pretending. With his pistol in hand, he nudged each man with his boot. They were indeed gone. He checked the one who had hurt the woman. He was also gone, from 2 bullets. Lily and her mother were holding each other, crying. The woman's shirt was torn and her face was swollen and red. Even in this situation, Silas could see she was beautiful. On the ride back home, the women shared Blue while Silas rode ahead, rifle ready, watching the hills and valleys for danger, but saw none. Mrs. Thompson cleaned herself up and changed into a dress for the trip to town. Her face was still swollen, but if she felt embarrassed about how she looked or what had happened, she hid it well. Once they were seated in the wagon, she thanked Silas sincerely. "Mrs. Thompson, I appreciate your words, but Lily was just as brave as I was. She is a very brave girl. Silas, she is my daughter. She loves me, and I knew she would come after us. You didn't have to help, but you did, and you both saved me from a terrible fate. So I believe you can call me by my first name, Gwen." Lily didn't seem pleased, but he thanked Gwen and smiled at Lily. She did not smile back. He knew she was upset, but did she have to look so sad whenever he glanced her way? They stopped at the campsite where the bodies lay and continued on to Dogtown with the 3 men on the wagon. A crowd began to follow as they crossed the wooden bridge over the Frio River and grew as they reached the main street near the general store. Silas helped Lily and Gwen down and led them to the door. The storekeeper, hearing the noise, came outside. "Where can I find the sheriff?" Silas asked. The storekeeper pointed to a small building on the next block. "Who are they?" he asked, pointing to the dead men. "And what happened?" Gwen spoke up. "These men came to our home late last night. They hurt my husband and took me away. The one in the blue shirt tried to harm me, but I fought back and escaped into the bushes. He shot at me when my daughter and Silas found me. These men fired at Silas and my daughter, and Silas shot all 3 of them." The small crowd around the wagon listened quietly, murmurs of anger rising. "Attacking families and taking women! They deserved what they got." One man moved the body, blocking the view of the one beneath it, and exclaimed, "That's Josiah Hayes! Unarmed Elijah Hayes' youngest son." The whispers grew louder, and the storekeeper asked, "Are you Silas?" "Yes, I am," he replied firmly. "Listen, you, the woman, and the girl need to leave for the north right away. Elijah Hayes is a tough man, and he and his gang will come after you for what happened to his son." Silas stood tall and declared, "I'm not running away. First, I will report to the sheriff and take care of the bodies. Then I'll come back here, gather these supplies, and take them to our settlement. If Elijah Hayes or anyone else is looking for me, that's where they will find me." The crowd fell silent, unsure if the young man was brave or just reckless. "Are you saying you shot those 3 men?" a skinny guy with 2 guns questioned. "Sounds like you caught them by surprise." Silas was ready to respond, but Gwen spoke up. "Silas gave them a better chance than they gave my husband. Robert went out to meet them, and they shot him without a word. This morning, Hayes pointed his gun at me, an unarmed woman. When he saw me running, Silas shot him. The other 2 started firing at him, and he shot them too. The bullet holes were in front, not behind. You weren't there, I was. Silas gave them a chance, and it was better than what they offered my husband, so don't twist the truth." "What does she mean by twist the truth?" a bald man with a big beard asked. "She means the boy shot them fair and square," another answered. The gunslinger with crossed pistols spoke again. "I don't believe it. Hayes, Knowles, and Anderson were great with a gun. They were my friends. If you think you're so good, step out and face me." Silas had learned to shoot from a young age and was skilled. He carried a Colt Peacemaker in a holster made for quick access. He was confident and not afraid. Gwen and Lily tried to stop him, but he pushed past and stood firm. "Are you calling me a coward? If you are, draw your guns." The storekeeper moved Lily and Gwen aside, while the crowd backed away, leaving them alone. The gunslinger was taken aback by Silas's boldness. He had challenged him and now felt pressured to act or look foolish. He reached for his guns, but before he could grab them, Silas aimed his weapon from 10 feet away. The gunslinger raised his hands in surrender. "Drop those guns! You challenged me, so don't make me think you'll try to use them." Wow! Did you see that? He had his gun right in front of Clyde before Clyde could grab his own. "Now you hand those belts over here, holding them by the buckle. I will leave them with the sheriff after I talk to him. But if I were you, I'd stop carrying guns. You talk too much and you're not quick enough." The sheriff was not pleased to see the 3 bodies, especially since one of them was Josiah Hayes. He also did not like hearing about Robert Thompson being harmed on his porch or the news that his wife was taken away. All of this meant more work for him, and he really did not want any more of that. He was worried about Elijah Hayes and thought about arresting the boy to protect himself. The issue was that everyone in town had heard the woman tell her story, and the boy claimed his dad was a Texas Ranger, making it hard for him to arrest him without causing trouble for himself, and those Rangers would not take kindly to that. All 3 of them gave him their written accounts, and he let them go after promising to look into the matter. He warned them that he would come for them if he found any laws were broken. The woman looked serious, and the boy's eyes were cold. "You have our statements. We didn't lie, but we expect to see you at the Thompson Ranch tomorrow to look into the death of my husband," Gwen told him firmly. He mumbled that he already had plans for the next few days, but he would come by later. "Of course you will," Silas replied sarcastically. "Probably bring Elijah Hayes with you too, right?" They turned away from him and climbed onto the wagon. He watched them drive off into the woods after crossing the bridge, then went back to his office to read their statements. He could read and write, which was more than what many people could do, but their writing was neat, with proper capitalization and punctuation. He knew they were serious people, but he thought unarmed Elijah would not care about that. So he put the papers away and decided to start on his daily drinks. He had a bad feeling about all of this. Silas drove the loaded wagon back to the Thompson house. Lily wanted to stay, but Gwen warned her that the rest of the Hayes gang might come at any moment, so they needed to go with Silas. She sent Lily to gather her things, and she did the same. Silas parked the wagon in the barn to keep the items safe from the weather. Back inside, he was again drawn to the large collection of books more than he had ever seen. Gwen walked back into the room while he was looking at one. "I can tell you are well educated by how you speak and write, Silas. My husband was a professor at the State University in Kentucky before the war. He chose not to join either side when the war began, but he was drafted by the Union after the Conscription Act passed in 1863. Luckily, he was sent to the western frontier, where he mostly dealt with outlaws and deserters. When he returned to Kentucky, he learned about the terrible situation his cousins were facing in Georgia and South Carolina. Their farms and homes had been destroyed, their animals killed, and 2 of his cousins had been harmed by troops. His cousins traveled through Kentucky on their way to Texas and stayed with us for a week. This made Robert think we needed a fresh start away from all the chaos and trouble. We bought land, built a nice home and barn, grew crops and raised animals surrounded by friendly neighbors, even if they were not well educated. We were happy and thought we had made a good choice. Now he is gone, and his wife and daughter have no one to protect them from the group of troublemakers who took his life. "It just doesn't seem fair," Gwen cried out, bringing Lily rushing into the room. She hugged her mother and they both sobbed until Lily reached out for Silas to join them. He felt crushed by Gwen's words, but holding the 2 of them was almost too much for him. He had a mother and sisters that he hugged often, but it felt different this time. When the crying lessened, Silas spoke. "Losing a husband, Gwen, and a father, Lily, must be very hard. I feel your pain. But please, don't think you are alone. If you come with me, you will be safe and cared for. Our group has 4 families and my Uncle Lorenzo, who left the 7th Cavalry after the Black Hills expedition. He added a room to our barn and sleeps there, but he has bought some land nearby, and we will help him build a house and barn when he is ready to move there. There are 5 men, 4 women, 7 boys, and 8 girls. We are all ready to help keep each other safe. Even the younger kids know what to do in tough situations. You can share one of our rooms, and my younger sisters can share another room until we figure things out. I am asking you to come with me, and I hope you agree, but I cannot let you stay here knowing how much danger you are in." Gwen smiled, but Lily looked worried at his last words. "What do you think you will do? Just carry us away like bags of flour? If we decide not to go, we won't go. If I have to, I will. Just remember, you don't weigh as much as a sack of flour." Lily was upset, but Gwen stepped in. "It won't come to that, Silas. We appreciate your offer, but we will want to come back here once it is safe. Everything we brought from Kentucky was in our wagons, and we're not leaving anything behind. We should stay here for the night and hit the trail early tomorrow. It's safer and more comfortable than sleeping outside," she suggested. She placed her hand on his shoulder, gave him a playful smile, and said, "Silas, I know you've been eyeing our books. Would you like to take some along to read?" He happily chose 10 books and put them in a bag on his wagon. He kept a small one to read later. Gwen sorted through the clothes and prepared dinner. Lily called the 2 mules and 3 horses, putting them in a corral and feeding them. Then she organized the harness, reins, and saddles for tomorrow. These were skills her father had taught her, and she was quite skilled. Silas rode back to his camp to get a few items he had hidden. He returned, took care of the mules, unsaddled his horse, brushed them down, and placed his horse and mules in a different corral. Lily tossed them some hay from the barn, and he brought them grain from his wagon. The 2 corrals shared a water trough filled by a windmill with a rock cistern raised above the ground. He spent a while looking at the well and the water storage. He thought about building something similar at Carr Settlement if the water was close enough, just like it was here. He figured he could persuade his family to do it, especially since his father would appreciate having water for the animals and garden. His mother and sisters would love having water inside the house for cooking and using the bathroom. He had seen indoor bathrooms at the best hotels in San Antonio, but this was the only one he had seen on the frontier. Silas was the first to wake up. He checked his watch and saw it was 4:30. He got dressed, lit a lantern, stepped outside to take a look around, and took care of his needs in the brush. He had slept peacefully, knowing his mules would alert him if anyone came close during the night, and he was eager to start their journey. The longer they stayed, the more time Elijah Hayes had to track them down. He fed the horses and mules in each corral before heading back inside. Gwen was making biscuits and bacon for breakfast. She welcomed Silas and invited him to sit down. There was coffee on the stove, so he poured a cup, added sugar, and sat down. He couldn't help but admire the lovely woman, who looked elegant even in a denim shirt and pants. Although her clothing was loose, her shape was still noticeable. She was charming and warm, while her daughter was plain, thin, and quite bossy. You could sense that one day she might start to look like her mother, but for now, there was not much similarity. Gwen asked him how far they would go that day, where he thought they would spend the night, and the general direction of their journey. He replied that if they left by 6, they could reach the settlement, moving to the north-northwest. Just as he finished speaking, Lily appeared. She glanced at him, said good morning, and then started chatting with her mother. He enjoyed a tasty breakfast while Lily talked away. After finishing his meal, he took his dishes to the sink and thanked Gwen warmly. She placed her hand on his sleeve and said it was her pleasure. Then she suggested that if Lily drove their wagon and she drove the cars, he could keep an eye on the road ahead and behind, warning them if anyone came near. Silas planned to drive his wagon and let Lily look ahead, but he could see the benefits of Gwen's suggestion. He nodded and agreed it was a better plan. Lily looked a bit disappointed, but she kept quiet. With everything packed, Lily hitched the mules to their wagon and brought it to the front porch. She then saddled their 3 horses, put lead halters on them, and tied them to the wagon. Silas took the suitcases and boxes of clothes and other items that Lily and Gwen had picked out and loaded them into the wagon. They set off at first light, and Silas felt hopeful they would reach the settlement by nightfall. The last 20 miles would test the mules as the wagons were heavy, but the land was mostly flat and the path was good. They would stop every 2 hours to water and rest and still make it in time for supper. At the start, Silas rode ahead and around to keep watch on their trail and any possible directions someone might come from. He climbed hills that the wagons avoided and used his spyglass to look for dust or movement that could signal someone was following them. After they had covered about 10 miles, he felt more relaxed and rode beside the wagon that Gwen was driving. They talked for hours, and he found that her intelligence was even more impressive than her beauty. He was drawn to the older woman in a way he didn't quite understand. As for Lily, he understood her very well. She could be moody and difficult, teasing him with rude comments whenever she got the chance, even when, at her mother's request, he rode back to offer help. "No, I don't need anything from you. Just go back and bother my mother for the rest of the trip." Upset by her harsh words and challenging attitude, he rode ahead to scout the trail behind them. The wagons broke out of the brush and into the open fields of home an hour earlier than he had expected. He made one last round to make sure no one was following them closely. After checking, he sped past the wagons to reassure his family that everything was safe. Only his mother stood on the porch, but he noticed the gun barrels peeking out from the shooting slots. Safety first, just as his father always said. Once he was spotted, he returned to guide the wagons to the house. Carr settlement was simple. 4 houses spaced about 100 yards apart in a rectangle, with barns and sheds further away. In the middle, a road connected the houses, and a large vegetable garden filled the southwest corner. A flagpole with the Texas Lone Star flag stood just beyond the road in front of the Carr home. When Silas arrived and signaled to his mother, families appeared on each porch to greet them. Silas stopped just past his home, letting Gwen and Lily park the wagons in front. He hopped off his horse, waved for everyone to join them, and helped Gwen and Lily down from the wagons. "I want to introduce you to my new friends, Lily Thompson and her mother, Gwen. They faced some trouble, which we can talk about later, so I invited them to stay with us for now. The supplies you ordered are in the first wagon and their personal items are in the second. Please put the common supplies in storage and take your own to your homes. Mother, if it's okay with you, they will stay with us until things settle down at their ranch. Billy, Tommy, please help them with their things, wherever Mother directs. I'm going to ride back to Spyglass Hill and check our trail. The trouble we might be facing could still be around, so we need to be ready. It seems that Papa and the other men aren't here. Are they working in the fields?" Samuel had been listening. When Silas mentioned trouble, he hurried to the family barn and quickly returned on his saddled horse. "No, son. They were asked by Ranger Wallace to help capture 3 escaped criminals. We don't know when they'll return, so we must rely on our defense plan without their help." She looked at the neighbor women, who nodded in agreement. Turning to Gwen and Lily, she said with a warm smile, "Ladies, my name is Madeline Carr. Welcome to Carr Settlement and to our home. Please come inside and I'll show you to your room. Kathleen, please move your things in with your sister so she can help change the sheets for our guests. Boys, please help put away our supplies first, then take everything from the Thompsons' wagon inside. I'll show you where to put it." Samuel rode alongside Silas as they trotted back up the road. "I just returned from checking the cattle and noticed you coming, so I wanted to hear what you had to say. I felt uneasy when I saw 2 wagons and the women, which made me think I'd need my horse soon. I'll ride with you and take the first watch. In about 15 minutes, they reached Evans Hill, also known as Spyglass Hill. They saw no signs of anyone nearby, so they moved to some rocks to check for snakes. Samuel, you need to eat, and your horse needs food too. I need to speak to Mother. I'll go back now and send Abe to watch. He's old enough to help, and there's no sign of anyone chasing us right now. I'll take the second watch from 10 until dawn, and you can take over after breakfast. Let's make sure the signal fire is ready so we can see it tonight if needed. I'll cut some green mesquite and bring it back for you to stack by the fire. Silas put his hand on his friend's arm to get his full attention. Samuel, I won't sugarcoat it. The men after us are known troublemakers, and I expect them tomorrow. Their leader is One-Arm Hayes, and he has a bad reputation. So when you take over tomorrow, if you notice anyone coming, light the fire and make it burn bright. Then add 4 pieces of green wood. As soon as the smoke rises, hop on your horse and head back. We need you ready for our plan to work. The younger boys had already fed and watered the mules. Silas took his horse to the barn, unsaddled him, and let him drink water before feeding him hay and grain. After hanging up his saddle and tack, he walked through the back door of the house. The car home was lively with all the women from the settlement and others not on watch duty. Silas hung up his hat and made his way down the hall to the living room. He could hear the women talking to Gwen in the kitchen and the kids listening to Lily on the front porch. When he heard Gwen mention his name, he paused to listen. Oh, yes, it's an incredible story. After he found Lily and buried my husband, he discovered the gang that kidnapped me. We all know what they had in mind that night, but horsemen kept riding close to where we were camped. Each time it got quiet, they would share what they planned to do, but then more horsemen would come by and they would scatter. I was tied up and couldn't get away, but I kept praying that someone would come to rescue me. By mid-morning, Hayes decided he wanted me or he would stop at nothing to get me. I fought back and scratched his face, then ran into the bushes. He shot at me, but then Silas and Lily both fired back with their rifles. The other 2 men started shooting at them, but Silas took them down. He was so brave. Madeline, you must be so proud of him. Oh, I'm very proud, but he only did what his father and I taught him. I would feel ashamed if he hadn't. His father must have taught him how to stand up for himself, too. I've never seen anyone act so quickly, Gwen said excitedly. What? Please tell us what happened, Mrs. Turner exclaimed. When we went to the store to get your things, this rude man with guns on both sides insulted him. Silas stood tall and faced him. Everyone else ran away. Silas told the man to take back what he said or get ready for a fight. The man went for his guns, but before he could even grab them, Silas had his own out and pointed right at the man. Let me tell you, that man was scared. The crowd grew louder, and it was hard to tell who was saying what because everyone was talking at once. Silas stood where he couldn't be seen. This woman clearly thought highly of him, and the story had some added flair. He smiled, enjoying the moment, when he heard one of the girls on the front porch ask eagerly, "And what did Silas do next?" Staying hidden, he took a few steps toward the open porch door to hear Lily's answer. He knew it might not go as well with Miss Thompson as it had with her mother, but he wanted to listen. Oh, without caring about his own safety, Silas stepped out to face the man. The man had 2 guns. Each had marks on them, meaning he had been in fights before. Silas stood just a few feet away and told him to get ready. The man smiled with ill intent, and his hands moved toward his guns. But before he could even grasp them, Silas had his own drawn and aimed right at the man. His gun was just a foot or 2 from the man's face. The man moved his hands away from his guns and raised them high. His confidence vanished and was replaced by fear. When Silas told him to drop his guns or he would take action, the man pleaded not to be harmed and quickly let go of his guns. Silas then told him he shouldn't carry guns because he was too slow, and everyone laughed. That frightening man was scared of Silas, and the crowd couldn't stop talking about how brave and quick he was. Silas stood still. He couldn't believe Lily's version of the story. If anything, she made it sound even more impressive than her mother's tale, and yet she had hardly spoken kindly to him during their time together. He felt lost. Worried about being caught listening and feeling guilty, he stepped back into the hallway, stomped his boots at the door, and called out that he was home. His mother invited him into the kitchen, where he was welcomed by 10 eager faces, including his mother and sisters, along with other women and girls, and most importantly, Gwen. Feeling shy, he smiled and greeted everyone before asking his mother for something to eat. He was treated like royalty, with everyone eager to help him. He noticed how Carol Ann and Samantha stayed close, watching him. They were nice girls his age, but they had always been friends, so he thought of them as sisters instead of possible dates. It seemed they saw him differently now. Gwen was different. She was older and more refined, and he knew they had grown close. He sensed she had special feelings for him. He wondered how that could work. He was nearly 18, she was 32, and Lily was 14. It was an unusual situation, but he believed they could make it work if it meant being with the amazing woman he admired. The younger kids came in while he ate, looking up to him with admiration. The boys surrounded him, giving him friendly pats and praising him for helping the women. The younger girls stood nearby, smiling brightly. Lily chose the chair next to him and asked if he wanted more to eat or to drink. He nearly dropped his fork but managed to say not right now. She wore a cheerful smile, looking lovely now that she was clean and her curly hair was neat. He smiled back, and she flashed a bright smile at him, tossing her shiny hair back with her hand. He quickly focused back on his food, confused by how she had changed and curious about what had happened in the last few hours. After dinner, Silas talked to Abe, who had come to take over for Samuel. Silas checked various places to make sure there were enough supplies like rifles and shotguns. 3 guards, a 12-year-old boy and 2 11-year-old girls were in the barns keeping watch. He reminded them to keep an eye on the hill and to let everyone know if they saw anything unusual. The boy just nodded, but the 2 girls looked a bit offended that he would remind them of something they already practiced, as if he thought they weren't capable. Before heading back to the hill for his shift, his mother and Gwen reminded him that they needed him there to protect the women and children, so he shouldn't take any risks at the lookout spot. Now he understood how the 2 girls felt when reminded of something so clear. He promised and rode away. As he passed the 2 barns, Lily called out to him from behind one. He stopped and rode over to her. "Can you get off for a moment? I want to give you something for good luck." He got down from his horse and told her he appreciated her thoughtfulness, but didn't think he needed luck for anything tonight. Lily came closer with her hand behind her back, as if she was hiding something. "Bend down," she said, and he did. She took off his hat and tied a leather necklace around his neck that held a Celtic cross. She said it was her grandfather's and wanted him to wear it for protection. As she finished, he began to raise his head and found her face just inches from his. He met her gaze for a moment before she gently pulled him closer and kissed him. He was so surprised that he froze for a second, but his surprise faded quickly as he kissed her back and wrapped her in a warm hug. She felt delicate in his arms, and as their lips met, he worried he might be too rough. Feeling lightheaded and confused by the unexpected moment, Silas tried to step back, but Lily held on to him and kissed him again, this time with a little more openness. After a few moments, she broke the kiss and said with a giggle, "That was my first kiss, and my second." He smiled widely and replied, "Mine too. I didn't hurt you, did I?" "No, but my lips are still tingling," she said with a playful smile that he had just begun to notice. "I have no experience, but you are a great kisser, Lily." "You are too. Now go and keep us safe, my hero. I'll have your breakfast ready when you get back." Silas rode back to Spyglass Hill with a muddled mind. He had just stepped into the surprising and wonderful world of girls, and he felt as confused as anyone could be. Dawn broke slowly in the east, casting warm colors among the scattered clouds before fully lighting the sky. As the sun rose, Silas carefully looked for any signs of Hayes and his gang. He saw nothing, so when Samuel came to relieve him, they quickly went over what to do if someone approached. Others in the settlement were busy with their chores when he arrived, but Lily was in the kitchen with his food ready. She looked at him shyly and served coffee, milk, biscuits, bacon, and eggs. Gwen and his mother stood in the doorway with knowing smiles, watching him, and he started to feel shy and embarrassed. They said only a few words, but he ate heartily. He thanked her, and when she looked him in the eyes for the first time since he arrived, she told him it was her pleasure. She smiled quickly at him before heading over to her mother. Gwen told Silas that he needed some rest, so she took Lily to help in the community garden. Silas went to his room, cleaned up with the pitcher and basin that were ready for him, dried off with a towel, and lay down on his bed. His mother came in before he could close his eyes. She gently brushed his hair back and kissed his forehead. He reached up, touched her arm, and thanked her. Unexpectedly, she sat on the edge of his bed and started speaking. "You know that your father and I have big hopes for you, and we are always proud of what you do. You are a smart young man, even without much formal schooling. You have strong values and work hard. That said, what you did for Gwen and Lily was beyond our expectations. We are happy you could help them, and we're glad you brought them here. They are nice people and good helpers. But I have 2 pieces of advice for you. First, I noticed how you look at Gwen and the way she talks about you. That can be risky for both of you. That kind of relationship can lead to troubles that could impact your life. Second, you might have forgotten that others saw you and Lily near the barn, so that news has spread around the settlement. I don't know if Peggy exaggerated, but even if her story is partly true, it's something you should be careful about. You are 18 and she is 14, much too young for a serious relationship. You are a good-looking and smart young man, and you will make someone very happy one day. But remember your goal of going to university before getting too involved. Also, think carefully before trying to pursue both a mother and her daughter. It could lead to big problems. Now get some rest. I'll wake you if anything happens, or at 4 if it doesn't. And don't worry, we all know what to do, and we will handle things properly without needing your guidance." She left Silas to think about her words and his feelings. He tried to process them, but he was so tired that he quickly fell asleep until his sister woke him at 4. His thoughts were still unsettled, but he felt much better, more awake and ready. After dressing, Silas walked to the kitchen where he was surprised to find his sisters and Lily cooking. "Good afternoon. Where's Mother?" "Good afternoon, big brother. Did you sleep well?" Kathleen asked. "Yes, I did, but I'm really hungry. When will we eat?" "Mother said you would wake up hungry, so we've been cooking for over an hour. Are you going to join us all for dinner at 5, or would you like to eat now?" asked Mary Virginia, his younger sister. She was 13, and Kathleen was almost 15, the same age as Lily. Lily simply stood and watched him, smiling in a way that he found appealing. "I should eat now. I need to ride up to the hill and look around with Dad's binoculars. I keep thinking they might arrive before dark, and I want us to have enough time to get ready." The 3 young ladies served him a tasty meal of fried venison steak, potatoes, and carrots, with fried apple pie for dessert. He gave each of them a quick kiss on the cheek, thanking them all. Lily remained shy around him, and as he rode away, he wondered why she seemed so different today compared to her boldness yesterday. It felt strange and confusing. The more time he spent with her, the less he noticed her thin frame. Instead, he admired her pretty face and red gold hair. And Gwen had hardly talked to him since yesterday. What was going on with her? Those 2 girls were so puzzling. Samuel was eager to take a break. He complained about the heat, the lack of shade, and how dull it was to just sit and watch. Then he untied his horse and rode back to the settlement to eat. Silas climbed on the rocks at the top of Spyglass Hill. He sat down and carefully scanned the hills and canyons for any roads or trails from the south, east, and north. He saw nothing. He hadn't checked the west because that would have taken more time, but he decided to do so now, just in case, and still saw nothing. He closed his eyes for a moment and then resumed his search of the most likely paths. He had been up there for almost an hour when something on the distant horizon caught his attention. There was a light spot on the blue horizon that he started to watch, with and without the binoculars. It was hard to tell if it was dust or just his mind playing tricks, so he carefully looked around again. When he returned to the area 10 minutes later, he could tell that what he was seeing was a dust cloud, and it was moving. That meant there were riders, and quite a few of them. They were at least 30 minutes away from the hill, even if they were riding fast, so he grabbed his horse and raced back to the settlement. There was still time to finish preparations without starting a fire that could give away their location. Those working behind the barn saw his galloping horse first. They hurried to alert the others, and everyone was waiting as he got closer and dismounted. "There are riders about 3,040 minutes out. Everyone go to your stations and get ready. Remember your training. We have to do this right." Everyone quickly spread out, leaving him with his mother, Gwen, and Lily. "Is it them?" asked Gwen. "I I don't know, but they are riding quickly, so we should assume it is them and prepare. What tasks has Mother given to you and Lily? Lily has her rifle. I have my shotgun and my husband's rifle. We'll be out front watching over the porch. Where will you be? I'm going to stand on the porch and talk to them. No! Lily shouted. That's what my daddy did, and they got him before he even spoke. You need to stay inside with us. You can't let them harm you. There are many differences. The biggest is that they will be surrounded by shotguns and rifles. Also, I know Elijah Hayes will want to tell me what he's going to do and why. Maybe I can reason with him, or maybe he'll just talk and then draw. Leave the door open. If I feel he won't listen, I'll step back inside and we can defend ourselves against the group. But I'm going to try to talk to him first. I've taken 3 lives this week. I want to stop there, and I don't want others in our settlement to feel that pain. But if they choose violence, that's on them. You don't know who among us got his son. I think it was my shot, Lily declared. I sleep well because he harmed Daddy and it was him or Mama, and I feel the same way now. They are coming here to hurt us, not to talk, Silas. Don't waste your breath. He knew she was right, but he had to try. Not everyone with a rifle or shotgun today would be as strong as Lily if they had to defend themselves, but he knew they would if it came down to protecting their family. You make a good point. I'll stand in the doorway, Lily. If it becomes a fight, I'll step inside and you'll shut the door. We built this house to be safe and we can shoot through the slots, so we should be all right as long as we avoid the windows. He went inside. Even though they did this regularly, they still checked their rifles, shotguns, and pistols. Ammunition was arranged neatly in rows in their boxes, and more was stored nearby. Silas was prepared to shoot through the slot beside the doorframe, so he leaned his rifle against the wall. They sat quietly, waiting. When the bell rang, they stood or knelt at their slots. Gwen was next to him on the left, and Lily knelt on his right. They faced the open area to the south. His mother was at a slot in the kitchen on the east. Kathleen was in her room, looking east. Mary, Virginia, and his younger brother Adam were in the back bedrooms, watching the north. There were 6 men with Elijah Hayes. They rode into the open area with their rifles up, looking carefully at each building they passed. Hayes turned his horse in a circle and shouted, I want the man and woman who ambushed my son. If they come out, we won't hurt you all, but if they don't, we will harm everyone here and destroy your buildings. We know your men are off with the Rangers looking for my late son and his friends, so all you have here are women and children. You don't stand a chance against us, so send them out, or we will start shooting. Silas stepped into the open doorway. I'm Silas Carr. I'm the one who ended your son and the other 2 after they harmed Robert Thompson and took his wife. There was no trap. They shot first and they faced the consequences. You say there are only women and children here. Do you men care whether the bullet hitting you was fired by a man, woman, or child? Because you are surrounded and outnumbered, just look around. At that, rifles and shotguns appeared through the openings of the homes and barns. Do you see? If this turns into a fight, you will all be in danger. We won't bury you nicely, we'll pile you on some wood and set it on fire. Now, Mr. Hayes, we can end this right here, and you can live to see another day. Your son made bad choices and faced the results. He tried to harm someone, and in the end, he got what he deserved. Ride back to your ranch, say goodbye to your son, and focus on your cattle, sir. There is no need for all of you to suffer today. Hayes listened, but his anger wouldn't let him back down. He squared his horse and prepared to reach for his pistol when the rider beside him grabbed his hand and shouted, "PA, stop! You know what he says is true. I loved my brother, but he made his own choices that led to this. Let's ride back to the ranch, give him a proper farewell, and take care of things there." "No way! I'm going to confront this boy, and then anyone else who goes against us." He broke free and turned to his son. "If you're scared, then ride away now." "Goodbye, Pa. I'll take care of our home, and I promise to bury you beside Josiah if these people will let me," he said, then made a last plea. "Please come with me." "Get out of here, coward." His son raised his hands and rode away from the group. Elijah Hayes steadied his horse again and faced Silas. "You are wrong," he shouted, reaching for his pistol. Silas drew his peacemaker and shot him down before he could pull his weapon. He stepped inside just as a bullet hit the door frame near his head. He heard Lily and Gwen fire and quickly positioned his rifle through the opening, noticing 2 more saddles were empty. Samuel fired from the barn loft, hitting another saddle. The last outlaw tried to escape the way he came, taking a shot at Samuel as he rode past. A shotgun fired from the Townsend house, and he fell off his horse. After a few minutes, the only survivor of the gang slowly rode back into the courtyard, hands raised high in the air. He paused in front of the car porch, and Silas came out to meet him. "My name is Jefferson Davis Hayes. I'm sorry for how things turned out, young man. You tried your best. Once he was a good man, but after losing his wife, his home, and his arm in the war, and spending 2 years in a prison camp, he changed. My brother made it worse by always getting into trouble, lying about it, and asking Father for help. If you're okay with it, I can carry Father home on my horse. As for the others, it's up to you. From what I know, none of them have family in Texas, especially not around here." Silas nodded and helped Jefferson secure his father on the horse. Just as they finished, they heard the sound of galloping horses. Silas looked at Jefferson, who said, "I don't know who it is, but we should get inside." They hurried into the house. Gwen and Lily both pointed their weapons at Hayes, and he raised his hands to show he meant no harm. Silas slammed the door and held his rifle ready just in case. The sound of the horses slowed down, and a voice shouted, "Hello? This is Ranger Wallace. Do you need help?" Samuel called from the barn, and doors opened across the area. Family members rushed out from every building, but Silas stayed alert. When the group arrived and he recognized them, he sighed with relief. He turned to the women he had rescued, the ones who had stood by him today. He wasn't sure who had fired the shots that took down the outlaws, but he knew they had fought bravely. Jefferson Hayes hung back as Silas signaled to Gwen and Lily. They quickly came over and wrapped their arms around him. They weren't crying, but he could feel their relief. "It's okay now. We're safe," he reassured them. Jefferson looked into Silas's eyes and smiled. He had been unhappy with his life, but stayed out of love for his troubled father. Now he felt free and wanted to be someone admired, someone embraced by caring people, like Silas, who was only a few years younger than his 22 years, but had already made a positive impact on others. Silas shifted his focus to the windows, watching the joyful reunions outside. He saw his mother speaking to his father, and they both glanced toward the house. "All right, everyone, it's time to go outside and meet my father, Uncle Lonnie, Ranger Wallace, and the other men of the settlement." He stepped outside first, then paused to wait for the others to join him on the porch. Together, they walked toward the now quiet gathering. "Papa, Uncle Lonnie, Ranger Wallace, Mr. Townsend, Mr. Gaddis, and Mr. Simmons. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Gwen Thompson, Miss Lily Thompson, and Mr. Jefferson Davis Hayes. They were my new friends and welcomed in our community." Ranger Wallace put his gun away and said, "Jefferson Hayes, you're the good son, right? As far as I know, you're free of trouble. But why aren't you lying on the ground with the others?" Silas stepped in. "Ranger, I told them they could leave. Jefferson tried to talk to his father, but when his father said no, Jefferson raised his hands and left. After things calmed down, he came back to get his father's body. We heard horses coming, so he joined us to be safe. When we saw you all, we stepped outside. He is Elijah Hayes' son, but like you said, he's the good son." The ranger nodded. "That's good enough for me. Now remind me which lady is which." This time, the introductions were more personal. Uncle Lonnie, back from 5 years with the 7th Cavalry, was shocked when he met Gwen. She smiled and shook his hand. He held on, surprised. Silas teased him. "Come on, Uncle Lonnie. You're supposed to be charming. Can't you even say hello?" Lonnie finally snapped back to reality and spent the rest of the evening showing why women usually liked him. Gwen, however, just found him amusing, while Lily ignored him and watched Silas get complimented for everything he had done since their last time together. Silas, always humble, blushed and shared the praise, quickly changing the topic. A year later, Silas went to Gwen's wedding in San Antonio and told Lorenzo it was the greatest achievement of your life. The morning after the wedding party, he hugged his family, then embraced Gwen and Lily, who had tears in her eyes. He lifted his bag onto his horse and rode to the train station, heading north to Austin and Georgetown. For the next few years, he would attend Southwestern University. Southwestern had opened just a few years before in 1873 by combining 4 other Methodist universities in Texas, including the first one in Rudersville, established in 1840. where a well-known Methodist minister and a distant cousin had been an early president. His education was funded by scholarships from the Texas Rangers, who expected him to study law and think about serving the state of Texas after he finished his studies. He took Tiberius on the train with him and planned to come home during the summers. Those plans changed when some state officials wanted this promising young man to work as an intern for them during his school breaks. It had been 3 years since he had been home. After Gwen and Uncle Lonnie married, they chose to go back to the Thompson Ranch, which Lonnie had kept in good shape while it was empty. Lily moved in with them for a while, but soon started attending Ursuline Academy, which was the best school for girls in the area. It was near the river in San Antonio, and daughters from the most respected families from Austin to San Antonio went there. He hadn't heard from Lily in over a year, but his sisters wrote to update him on her school and social successes. They also excitedly shared news of her many admirers and popularity in San Antonio, almost as if they were trying to brag. There was no need for that. Silas was dating the daughters of state officials and prominent families in Austin and Central Texas. Many of them were Lily's classmates and friends. They kept him posted about her activities, but since everyone believed he and Lily were a couple, he suspected their stories might not always show her in the best light. Somehow, hearing about her school achievements made him feel good, but learning about her admirers was a bit unsettling. Silas knew he had no reason to complain, as he was also doing well in Austin. Although he would never admit it, he had dated several nice young women, including the governor's oldest daughter. Even though he had made her happy, she ended up marrying the son of a rich supporter and moved to Dallas. He pretended to be upset by her choice, but secretly he was relieved. There were many wonderful girls in his village by the river and nearby, and he was ready to meet them. To make things better, the governor felt awkward about his daughter's choice and started treating Silas more kindly as a way to make up for it. While he learned a lot at the university, his most valuable lessons came from a wealthy widow who owned the ranch next to the university where he kept his horse. She was 38 and took an immediate liking to him when they met. He often stayed to have tea and snacks with her after seeing to his horse in the afternoons, and would share dinner with her as well. Within a week, she was cooking for him and waking him up with breakfast, adding a sweet goodbye before he headed back to university. Tilly had grown up in wealth in England and had traveled a lot, living in France and Italy with her parents. While in Paris, she met a charming, rich cattleman. He persuaded her to leave her easy life and join him in marriage. They moved to one of his large ranches near Georgetown, and she adjusted well to this new way of living, even though it was very different from her past. They had been happily married, though without children, for 10 years when he tragically died in a cattle stampede. She was heartbroken. To make matters worse, her parents were lost just a few months later when their ship sank while crossing the ocean to visit her. She grieved for 2 years before she started to accept attention from potential partners. However, most of them were not right for her, mainly because they seemed more interested in her wealth than in her. At 35, she was at a great point in her life, single, beautiful, and very rich. But she had been without a partner for 2 years until Silas arrived. Having traveled and experienced much in life, her views on relationships were quite different from those of women in Silas's world. For them, relationships were mainly about family, and enjoyment was not openly talked about. In fact, it was often thought that women who liked such things were improper. Lily smiled at such narrow views and taught her young friend about the many ways to connect with a partner. She carefully guided him in understanding how to please a woman, showing him the importance of preparation and care in their relationship. She explained that making a woman feel appreciated and wanted was essential. Their time together allowed him to learn and practice until he felt confident. Lily praised him before they parted ways, encouraging him to use his knowledge wisely and respectfully. He had tried his skills with several young women and a lonely widow, all of whom only wanted companionship and had given him positive feedback. Lily was now engaged to a wealthy man whom Silas had introduced her to, and they seemed very happy together. He wished them well and agreed to be the best man at their wedding in the fall. So, in 1880, at the age of 22, he graduated from university and successfully completed his bar exams. The Attorney General offered him a position on his team and he accepted, planning to start after a well-deserved 2-month break. The AG quickly agreed, and Silas made plans to visit Carr Settlement for a longer time. 2 days later, he loaded Tiberius onto the horse boxcar and showed his ticket to San Antonio to the conductor. No one knew he was coming, so when he arrived, everyone celebrated late into the night. It was too late to prepare a special meal, but his father promised a big celebration for the following Saturday. News spread quickly, and a big crowd was expected. Uncle Lorenzo and Gwen will arrive Friday night. They will stay in the guest house that he and your father built before moving to the ranch, his mother told him on Thursday. With a playful smile, she added, Gwen asked if you could take the buggy to San Antonio on Friday to pick up your old friend Lily from the academy. Would you do that? Knowing she was trying to set him up, he smiled back and replied, Of course, Mother. Will she be bringing someone with her, maybe? I hear she's quite popular in San Antonio. His mother raised an eyebrow. Just like you are with the young ladies in Austin, we've heard. No, I doubt she will bring anyone, but our new covered buggy can fit 4, so there's plenty of space. Smiling at her reply, he asked, What time should I be there to pick up San Antonio's shining star? Raising her eyebrow again, Mother answered, Her classes end at noon. Perhaps the Prince of Austin Society might want to arrive a little early to make himself known among the young people. He laughed and kissed his mother on the forehead. I had no idea you had spies in Austin, Mother. If you want to keep your personal life private, maybe avoid dating Lily's friends from Austin, son. Texas is big, but word travels fast, she replied. Silas changed horses at Ben Wallace's ranch, which was about halfway to San Antonio. Mrs. Wallace told him that her husband was away on ranger duties but would return in the afternoon. With a smile, she warned him he should prepare for a long chat, because her husband would be happy to see him after so many years. He could have arrived as early as 10, but decided to check out the downtown area first before going to Ursuline Academy to pick up the girl he hadn't seen in over 3 years. He knew she would have changed at 18 from the girl he last saw at 15, but he felt sure he would recognize her. If nothing else, her red gold hair would stand out. Would she know him? Probably, but he was now 2 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier than when they last met, and he was dressed in a suit instead of denim. He parked the horse and buggy under the shade of a live oak and walked towards the campus. He wasn't sure exactly where she would be, but the 3-story building had classrooms and offices, so he decided to start there. On his way to the building, he was stopped by one of the Robertson girls he had dated. After a friendly hug and kiss, she eagerly asked why he was there. He told her he was there to pick up Miss Lily Thompson and take her home to see her parents. Oh, so she is going to your graduation party. I should have guessed from how she mentioned her plans. Be careful with her, Silas. She's quite clever and knows how to charm men. Did he sense a hint of jealousy in her warning? Surely no well-mannered lady would speak poorly of another without a good reason. He chuckled softly, knowing full well that they would both compete to win over the same people. They walked side by side toward the boarding house where Ruth thought Lily would be, and her jealousy was obvious. It seemed that her feelings about Lily were more significant than those about him. She viewed his old friend as a rival. As they approached, a small group of young men gathered around a stylish young woman standing on the porch. As Silas got closer, he could see the glint of gold in the red hair of the girl, which was piled up nicely. Her back was turned to him, and he noticed that her fashionable dress had a bustle but otherwise flowed elegantly. If that is Lily, he thought, she certainly seems to have changed a lot. Good day, he called out to the group. I'm here to see Miss Lily Thompson. Could someone please tell me where she is? The frowns on the men's faces confirmed his guess. The person they were focused on was indeed Miss Lily. She turned to him with a bright smile, but her expression turned serious when she noticed the young woman by his side. Although he was sure she recognized him, she said, I'm Lily Thompson. Who are you and why are you looking for me? 2 could play that game. Oh, I didn't recognize you, Miss Thompson. It's been quite a while. You probably don't remember me, but I'm Silas Carr. Your parents asked me to come and escort you home. Is it just you? Or will any of these young men be joining us? Oh, Mr. Carr, I didn't recognize you either. It has been a long time. No, I'll be the only one traveling with you. The carriage is parked by the main building. Should I bring it around? Please do. Perhaps I can ask these gentlemen to help me with my bags. I have quite a lot, as I'm going home for the summer. Is there enough space? I'll get the carriage and we'll find out. He gave Miss Robertson a friendly kiss on the cheek, told her he was glad to see her, and hoped to meet again soon. Then he walked towards the carriage, which was a few blocks away. When he returned, the gentlemen and ladies were waiting beside the road. There was just enough room for all her bags, but it was tight. She greeted all the men with a kiss on the cheek, pretended to kiss Ruth Robertson, and let one of her admirers help her into the carriage. Silas got the horse moving, and she made a little show of waving and saying goodbye again. "So," she said as they drove off, "you studied hard to be a carriage driver?" He caught her teasing smile from the corner of his eye, so he looked straight ahead and replied, "It's one of the things I do well, but really, I'm here because your mother asked me to pick you up. Since it was your mother, I couldn't say no." "And what about you? Are you still focused on socializing and your admirers?" "Actually, I'm the best student at my school," she said proudly. "For some reason, the young men seem to like me, so it's true that I have plenty of friends, but socializing and young men are not my main interests. I'm here with young women from the finest families in Texas getting a great education." "That's good to hear. It's odd that my sisters only talk about parties and boys. Do you not tell them about your studies? Maybe they just prefer to share the other side. Besides, why do you care? I wouldn't want your family to spend money turning you into another socialite. Texas needs educated people, not more young women who marry for money and status." His reaction was not surprising, but she listened closely to his tone and watched his face. He stared ahead, making it hard for her to read his expression, but he sat stiffly, which said a lot. Normally, he would look around and make eye contact, but his clear effort not to do so spoke volumes. "What about you, Mr. Carr? From what my friends in Austin tell me, you enjoy socializing and are quite interested in charming young ladies, too. Are you looking for a wealthy wife, or do you plan to use your education to help Texas?" That struck a nerve. She noticed his jaw tighten and his eyes narrow. "On September 1st, I start working with Attorney General McCleary, who hired me to help with legal cases across the state. During my time at university, I met several remarkable young women. However, Georgetown to Austin is a long ride, and I was often busy with classes and weekend activities. My chances for socializing were few, while you have been living in San Antonio, surrounded by many young men who enjoy your company and the social scene there." "Silas, you sound a bit jealous. Why would you care what your skinny little friend, I believe that's what you called me before you left, is up to, or who she's dating?" He shrugged, keeping his gaze straight ahead. "Just curiosity, that's all." She let out a soft giggle. He turned to her, looking her over from head to toe. She felt a rush of warmth, but smiled proudly. She had dressed nicely and even used some makeup for this occasion. In a charming manner, he complimented her, saying, "It looks like my skinny little friend has blossomed into a lovely young woman, Miss Thompson." "Ha! I hear that sort of flattery way too often, Mr. Carr. There's no way you'd add me to your list of admirers." "So how about we just chat and catch up on the last 3 years without any games?" Silas smiled back. "I may have sounded a bit forward, but I truly meant it, Lily. You've really grown up." "How are your mother and Uncle Lonnie doing?" she asked. "They should be at the settlement by now. I assume you'll be staying with them." "Yes, until after the celebration. Then we will head back to the ranch." The rest of the trip to Ranger Wallace's ranch was filled with pleasant talk. However, Silas sensed a flicker of jealousy when he mentioned the governor's ball from 1878, where he attended with the governor's daughter, Serena. He found a brief delight in her unease, but didn't mention that Serena was only 13 at the time, and it was strictly a duty as her escort, not a romantic outing. He also kept quiet about his connection with Tilly Johnson. Although he was not ashamed of that relationship, he thought it best if she didn't know. Some stories are best left untold. When they arrived at the ranch, Catherine and Ben Wallace greeted them on the porch, and the Carr family's well-rested horse was waiting in the corral. After the men greeted each other warmly, they took Ben's draft horse off the cart while the ladies talked. Then they all went inside for sandwiches and tea. Lily was truly charming. She quickly had Catherine engaged in conversation before the table was even set, and the old Texas Ranger was captivated by her before they finished their meal. Silas sat quietly, enjoying Lily's lively storytelling and admiring how she could connect with people. It was nice to see her shine like this, as it would help him notice if she ever turned her attention toward him. Since it was getting late and they still had some distance to cover, they said their goodbyes until the next day. Ben and Catherine would be with them at the celebration, where Ben joked about sharing funny stories about his young friend, despite his friend's protests. A little way down the road, Silas said, "You certainly made a great impression on them, Miss Thompson." "They are really good people, aren't they, Mr. Carr? I enjoyed our short visit, and I'm looking forward to Mr. Wallace's stories tomorrow. He seems to like you a lot." "He's my dad's best friend. They served together back in the war, and my dad helps him out when he needs it. He's more like family than just a friend." "And as a young politician, Mr. Carr, do you view it as the war of northern aggression too?" "I see it as a tragic mistake by both sides. The North used their larger population to impose taxes that hurt the farming South, and many Southerners were too stubborn to accept the changes happening around them. My family didn't own slaves, but we were poor farmers in Tennessee, and the unfair taxes really affected my father and grandfather. The Reconstructionists act like they are better than everyone else, but their actions led to the resentment that caused the conflict. And it's important to remember that those who claimed to fight for unity also caused a lot of suffering along the way. So, Miss Thompson, I hope you understand where I stand based on what I've said. And yes, I know your father served in the Union Army. That doesn't change my view." She paused for a moment before replying. "You've just shared a side of you I hadn't seen before, Silas. It's surprising to see how strongly you feel about something that happened so long ago. I hope I don't see how you react if you feel wronged. Or have I? Is it the gunman from Dogtown, maybe?" He didn't feel the need to answer, but he knew he had acted more calmly during that event than he might have in other situations. He hoped Ben would keep those stories to himself. The people in the settlement spotted them from far away. A welcoming group made up of kids, older kids, and young adults waved. The adults joined in, greeting them from their homes and nearby fields. Colorful decorations hung from the barn doors closest to the central area where they gathered, and flags were strung around the newly laid concrete slab made while he had been away at school. Nearby, a well had been dug, and a windmill was set up just a few steps from the slab. A tall water tank stood beside the windmill, and fresh water was available from a tap at the bottom of a pipe leading from the tank. People could fill buckets or use the trough below. There were more pipes leading from the tank, but they went underground towards the Carr home and barn. The flags waved from pole to pole around the slab, wrapped around the windmill and up to the tank, where they were tied at the roof. These decorations were quite fancy for Carr settlement, and Silas appreciated the effort. After 3 days at home, he felt a bit overlooked, but Lily's joyful welcome matched his from days ago. It seemed she didn't return home often either. She was friendly to everyone, but her special bond with the Carr sisters was clear. They embraced warmly, hugging and chatting until Gwen appeared around the corner, pausing to watch. Gwen's beauty and grace took his breath away as always, but today she seemed to shine even brighter. Lily noticed her mother, broke away from the Carr sisters and rushed to her. They hugged, and then Lily stepped back looking at her mom. Still holding her hands, she asked something, and Gwen responded with a smile. Lily began hopping and squealing in excitement. Silas felt confused at first, but then realized that Gwen's figure had noticeably changed. He jumped down from the buggy, tied the horse to the rail, and rushed over to congratulate her. Gwen noticed him coming, released her daughter, and ran into his arms. They embraced tightly before she leaned back to look into his eyes and gave him a quick kiss. "I knew from the first time we met that you were someone special, Silas. Some people are surprised that you have a university degree and passed the bar exam at only 22, but I always believed you could do it. My biggest hope is that your new job gives you more time to visit your family and friends and to meet your new cousin." Silas felt a lump in his throat, but he stayed calm. "That's my wish too. I can't wait to meet my new cousin and spend time with them." Speaking of that, where is my favorite uncle? "With your dad, getting the fire pits ready. The steer is prepared, and now it's curing. The pits are dug, the firewood is gathered, and they are sharing some drinks while they work. Do you want to join them or go inside to thank your mom and sisters? They've been busy baking and getting ready for tomorrow's feast. "Let's go see Mom first," he said, leading his friend into the house. If only he were a bit older. They didn't notice the look Lily gave them, but her mother felt it and giggled. She needed to prepare her daughter's future partner for the tricks her daughter was planning. He had to stay aware before anything could begin. Her strong-willed daughter needed guidance, but she wasn't sure Silas knew enough about her daughter's antics. The other 3 wives of the settlement were with his mother, and he received warm greetings from each. They asked him about his trip to pick up his friend, how it felt to have a university degree, and what was happening around the state capitol. He was polite and friendly, but he made sure to keep his answers brief. As they started to make more bread, he excused himself and joined his dad, Uncle Lonnie, and some other men at the pits. The steer's head, wrapped in damp burlap, was placed on hot coals to cook through the night for the feast. Some people loved to eat special parts like the tongue and lips. Silas was not one of them. Silas shifted the conversation to the plumbing and water systems he had seen. He asked who had worked on it, how it was working, and the benefits it brought. He learned that his dad, Lonnie, and the other men had gone to the Thompson Ranch with Gwen to see their plumbing up close. After making a rough plan, they brought in a plumber from San Antonio who knew about indoor plumbing. He helped them improve their plans, and they got a driller to assist with the well and water storage. Following Silas's idea, they hired a company with better tools to find deeper, cleaner water. Following expert advice, the men of the settlement decided to install pipes and fixtures in their homes, washrooms, toilet rooms, and kitchens. Each house in the settlement had its own well and plumbing, in addition to the car well located in the central area. They agreed that the toughest job was digging holes and building the tanks and drainage areas for the toilets, but everyone felt it was worth it because it made the women very happy. The used water from the baths and sinks went into separate tanks, which helped water the vegetable and flower gardens. Overall, they decided that it was a great improvement for their homes, making the effort and cost well justified. The conversation made them thirsty, so they sent Silas to the root cellar for more homemade brew, a special gift from their German neighbor, Mr. Steinbach. He was a brewer back in his homeland, and his brew was strong. It did not take much to feel its effects. Luckily, they were called to dinner, which was beef stew and cornbread before they enjoyed too much. They ate on the steps and porch while the women finished baking and preparing the meal, then returned to their homes as night fell. Silas was used to late nights, so he settled into a chair in the backyard where he could see the sunset over the hills. Soon, Lily and his sisters, Kathleen and Mary Virginia, joined him, along with Samuel and Sonny. They gathered chairs, faced west, and watched the sun disappear as they shared stories about their lives and local happenings. Lily listened carefully to everyone's stories, but shared little about herself. Everyone except Silas asked about her school, the young men she had met, and her social life in San Antonio, but she mostly spoke about her studies. When asked more, Silas reacted the same way. It seemed neither of them wanted to share much about their lives or social experiences, at least not in front of the others. The younger ones went to bed soon after sunset, knowing tomorrow would be a long day. They started early, with breakfast served an hour before usual so they could clean up and prepare for the afternoon celebration. The wood stoves in all 4 homes would be used that day, but since the Carr family was hosting, most of the cooking would take place there. The main cooking pit was big enough to roast an entire steer, but different cuts required different cooking methods. Some cuts needed to be cooked slowly at low heat, while others were best cooked quickly at high heat. These variations were set up in the depth of the pit under a section of mesh wire, which was supported by rods made from pipes. Meanwhile, the wood at one end of the pit was set aflame and was burning down to create coals. There was a metal barrier about 3/4 of the way down the pit, separating different cooking areas. They would light the rest of it later to prepare the best cuts of meat. They used a mix of local mesquite and post oak logs because these woods burned strongly and kept hot coals for a long time. This was better than other woods like pecan or hickory, often used for smoking or grilling meat in other places. Both the men and women took pride in their cooking. They had sausage rings on the grill for a quick bite and 2 large pots of beans cooking over a fire located near the pit where the steerhead was roasting. Silas learned about everything that happened while he had been away. Settlers were getting better at growing crops in South Texas, where the sun was strong. There were two main farming seasons, one from planting in late February or early March to harvesting in June or July, and the other from planting in late August to harvesting in late November. The heat in July and August was so intense that crops often failed, so they figured out which crops to plant in each season. During the winter and spring season, they grew leafy crops like spinach and lettuce, along with corn, peas, beans, squash, tomatoes, potatoes, melons, and peppers. The fall was also good for beans, tomatoes, and peppers, but it was the best time for oats and pumpkins. Onions, a common ingredient in many South Texas dishes, were planted in the fall or winter and harvested in the spring and summer. Other herbs were usually planted in summer and picked in late fall. They had tried to grow wheat, but it didn't thrive in that region, so they also grew cash crops they could sell or trade for flour and sugar. Talking about farming made them hungry. They grilled sausage, brought some bread from the house, and enjoyed a late morning snack. A nearby family, the Jamesons, arrived early, and Bud had a bag of venison jerky that also helped fill their stomachs until the big meal later. Inside the houses, the women and girls were busy baking and cooking vegetables. The whole area smelled delicious, which probably drew in guests arriving before the celebration was set to start at 3. Silas spent that hour greeting people, answering questions and thanking them for coming. By 3 o'clock, he was ready for a drink, but more guests kept arriving. The arrival of Catherine and Ben Wallace, along with their guest, the famous Ranger William A. Bigfoot Wallace, created quite a buzz. Silas enjoyed a brief moment away from his responsibilities as the host and decided to get a drink of water from the well. As he turned back to the crowd, he noticed a lone rider coming towards him. He didn't know this man. He was tall, dressed nicely, and somewhat attractive, though he had a slick look about him. The man carried 2 pistols and a saddle gun, which seemed odd for a celebration. Silas felt a sudden urge to wear his own pistols, but still stepped into the road to talk to him. "Hello there. How can I help you?" Silas asked. "I'm here on the invitation of Miss Lily Thompson. Please show me where I can find her," the man replied. "I'm Silas Carr. This is my family home, and this is a celebration by my family. You can stay on your horse while I check with Miss Thompson about your invitation," Silas said firmly. The stranger didn't give his name, but smirked and said, "Go ahead, boy. I'll be right here." Silas went into the house and looked for Lily, but instead found her mother. "Gwen, where's Lily? There's a man outside who claims she invited him." Gwen looked worried and went to the window to look outside. Then she hurried to the back of the house where Kathleen's room was located and shut the door. Silas could hear raised voices. First from Gwen, then Lily responded. Lastly, he heard Gwen's voice in a tone of urgency he had not heard before. Lily came down the hall quickly and approached Silas. "I heard you turned my date away. Why did you do that?" Caught off guard by her outburst, Silas felt a surge of emotion and answered her with equal intensity. "I haven't denied him yet, but this is my celebration. I can refuse entry to anyone I want, including your date or even you. Maybe you would both be better off elsewhere, Miss Thompson." Lily was taken aback and softened her tone. "I'm sorry, Silas. I was told I could invite someone, so I did. Please let him join me inside. We'll stay out of your way." "I will allow it out of respect for your family, but I don't like how he acts, and I will keep a close eye on him. He looks like someone well known for trouble. If I find out that's who he really is, he'll have to leave." "I doubt you can handle that, Silas," Lily replied, a hint of scorn in her voice. "He's a grown man and knows how to manage himself." Silas turned and walked away, leaving her there. He went to his room, strapped on his Colt Peacemaker, and then went outside. Gwen and Kathleen stood nearby, hands over their mouths in surprise. "What have you done, foolish daughter?" Gwen asked with worry in her voice. Lily went pale and stood frozen in place. "What have I done?" she thought to herself. She had invited Billy Clement hoping to make Silas jealous, but instead she had made him very angry. Now he was walking outside to confront Billy. She quickly left the house. Billy was still on his beautiful horse, looking confident in his well-fitted suit as he smiled down at Silas, who spoke in a serious tone. She called out, "Hello, Mr. Clement. I'm so glad you could come. Please join me inside for a cup of tea." Silas and everyone listening understood her invitation as a way of rejecting him. She was trying to ease the situation and keep Silas from being hurt, but no one saw it that way. She received unfriendly looks from the crowd, especially from Silas, making her feel small. Nothing is going as I planned, she thought. Things got worse when Billy walked over, touched her arm, and greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. After she regained her composure, she noticed the disappointment on her mother's and Kathleen's faces. They turned away, clearly upset with her and her guest. Feeling embarrassed, she took Billy to the kitchen to introduce him. He tried to charm the women and girls, but they only responded coolly. Lily realized she had made a big mistake, but she felt there was nothing to do but wait it out. Hoping for a warmer welcome outside, she led him through the back door. Unexpectedly, he took her arm as if they were a couple, walking confidently toward the gathering. She spotted Silas holding a drink, but he turned away when he saw her approaching with Billy. So she decided to go to Lorenzo, hoping for a friendly greeting. Lorenzo didn't seem happy, but he shook Billy's hand and said hello, which was more than anyone else had done. As Lily looked for a place for them to sit, she heard a loud voice. "Billy Clement, what are you doing here?" Ben Wallace stood up, and just behind him was his fellow ranger, Bigfoot Wallace, who was a very large man. He glared at Clement, who immediately said, "I'm here by Miss Thompson's invitation. I'm not looking for trouble." Ben Wallace gave Lily a disapproving glance, but said, "Make sure you don't. I'm not sure if you have any issues waiting for you, but if you cause any problems, William and I will take you back to San Antonio. Got it?" Clement nodded, but Lily could feel the tension in his body, even though they weren't touching. She looked at him and quietly said, "It seems like we aren't welcome here." "Maybe you should go." Clement looked at her with a serious expression that she had never seen on his usually friendly face. She watched as he softened, placed his hand over hers, and returned to the charming manner he was known for in San Antonio. "That's not needed, Lily. I see why they might be jealous. I'm with the most beautiful woman here. Who wouldn't be jealous? Let's just enjoy a drink together." He went to the table, got 2 cups of punch, and then took a flask from his suit pocket. "I'll add a little something to make the punch better, and we can sit and chat for a while." She wanted to say that she didn't drink alcohol, but he had already poured it. Looking around, she noticed her mother and best friend, Kathleen, watching her with clear disapproval. She hesitated, but remembered her goal for the evening, to show that she could handle herself in any situation. She believed that was the kind of woman someone like Silas would admire and want in a partner, so she took a sip. When she looked over her cup, she met Silas's gaze and saw only disappointment. This was not how she had planned it. He had not noticed the beautiful dress she had custom-made for the occasion, or the hairstyle that showed off her neck and shoulders. Instead, he was giving her a look filled with disapproval, while Billy leaned in to whisper that he wanted to have some time alone with her. Had she misjudged Silas so badly? She had been able to play boys at school and around San Antonio against each other, and she thought she could do the same with Silas. She had picked Billy Clement, known as a charming troublemaker, because she believed that would make Silas want to compete for her attention, giving her the upper hand. She briefly wished she hadn't made a mistake, but decided to stick to her plan. She fluttered her eyelashes at Billy and giggled, pretending he had said something funny instead of disrespectful. He took that as a sign to get up, so she stood too, confused. He took her arm, and they walked away from the party towards the barn beside the house. She allowed him to lead until she saw what he was thinking. Did he really think she would go into the barn with him? What would he think of her? What would everyone else think? She stopped and asked him where they were going. He replied in his most charming voice, "I thought we could take a walk away from everyone and get to know each other better. I can see that you want to take our friendship to a different level." She looked him right in the eyes and said, "No, Billy, you are my guest, not my close friend. That will never change, so please forget that idea. We can return to the party and try to enjoy it, or you can go. I won't be going anywhere else with you because we are only acquaintances, and that is all we will ever be." His expression turned cold and tense. "So I am just here to make someone else jealous. That guy, right? I have seen the way you look at him. Let me tell you, he dislikes you now. He and the other men here know who I am, and inviting me to his celebration is disrespectful. He won't want anything to do with you, and neither will the others. You might as well come with me because your reputation is damaged by what you've done today." Lily turned pale at his words, more scared they might be true than angry at his rudeness. How could she have misjudged the impact of inviting him? He was known as a bad boy, which made him appealing to many young women and even some older ones. At the ball where they first met, she thought she could manage him easily. But here he was, holding her arm tightly, insisting she leave with him because she had already harmed her reputation just by being near him. She had no wish to be with him at all. There was only one man she cared about, and now it seemed she had ruined her chances with him forever. She tried to pull away, but Billy held her in place and said, "It's time to go. We aren't wanted here." He pulled her closer and kissed her. She fought back, but when he pulled away, he smiled and said, "Tonight we will channel your energy in a different way." She slapped him hard with her other hand. He laughed and started to pull her toward his horse. Suddenly someone grabbed his shoulder, turning him back to the party where everyone was watching. Angrily, he let go of Lily and quickly reached for a hidden weapon with the intent to confront her friend. Just before he could aim, a shot rang out, hitting his hand and making him drop the weapon. He winced in pain, holding his hand tightly. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice you were left-handed, Billy? Did you really think I didn't know about your hidden gun, the one you used to shoot those 3 men? You've never won a fair fight, always pretending to draw with your right hand while using the gun in your left sleeve. Well, now you have the chance to use your right hand for a fair fight." Silas put his Colt back in its holster and stepped back. "Whenever you're ready, Billy, grab that gun and let's see how fast you are." Billy complained, "You hurt my shooting hand. It's not fair. It's more fair than the fights you've had. Now draw and let's see what happens." Billy raised his hands. "If you shoot me, it will not be right. I'm not going to draw. You coward! You're just like the rest of your family trying to sneak by. You tried to harm me before. I had every reason to stop you then, and I have every reason to do it now without facing any trouble for it. But I'll give you a chance. Draw that fancy pistol and let's see if you can really stand up to your reputation. Think about your father, your cousin, and others from your family. Do you think they'd want you back if they knew you walked away from a fight with me? If you step back, everyone here will spread the word all over Texas, and you'll be the joke of the state. You can either fight me or live as someone known for being scared. What will it be?" The 2 rangers, Silas's dad and uncle, along with 2 other men, stood close by but well out of the way. The crowd behind them had quietly gathered so everyone could hear what was happening. Gwen was comforting a crying Lily, who kept saying, "I'm really sorry, I didn't know, I promise I didn't know." Clement looked at the people near him in the cold eyes of Silas and realized he only had one option. He might have to leave Texas, but he always wanted to see California. He unfastened his gun belt and let it drop. "I'm unarmed, Ranger Wallace. Tell him to let me go. If he shoots me now, it won't be right." Wallace didn't respond, so with his hands still raised, Clement turned and walked toward his horse. He felt sure that Silas wouldn't shoot him in the back, although he himself wouldn't have hesitated to do so. As he mounted his horse, he remembered his rifle and thought about whether he could grab it, shoot Silas, and escape. "Yes, you should, Clement," came a voice from behind him. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Go ahead and put down that rifle," the voice said. "My pistol is put away. You might get me before I can take it out." Clement shook his head. "No thanks. I need it for protection while I leave here and head out of state. I won't see you again. If we meet again, it will be the last time. And don't even think about stopping somewhere and causing trouble. We'll have guards posted and they will act quickly. I wouldn't dream of it. I may not be much, but I would never harm a crowd with women and children. And about Silas, the girl, she didn't understand. I kept a low profile with her. She was only trying to make you jealous, which is new for me. Usually I have good luck with women, but this time I got nothing. Treat her kindly, she's still young." With that, he rode away, holding the reins tightly. Silas and the crowd watched him disappear over the hill. Samuel patted Silas on the shoulder. "I'll keep an eye on him from the barn until he's out of sight over the last hill. Do you want me to stick around after that?" "No, Sam, just until he's over the hills, but thanks for your offer. I believe him when he says we won't see him again." Sam hurried up into the loft, and Silas turned back to the crowd that was still gathered. "You traveled from all over for this, and my family and friends have prepared a lot. Let's put this behind us and enjoy our time together. We have plenty to celebrate, and I appreciate every one of you for coming. Now, let's go back and have a party." They all turned and started chatting excitedly among themselves. His dad and Ben Wallace clapped him on the shoulders, and Ben said, "You did well. Handled that as best as it could be, while also getting rid of a troublemaker. Now, you should come and enjoy your celebration." He took a few steps and soon found Gwen and a very sad Lily. "Silas, she wants to talk to you for a moment. Can you please give this girl a chance?" He sighed deeply, but Gwen's worried look and Lily's tear-streaked yet lovely face were hard to resist. He turned to Lily, who was looking down. Gwen joined the two men and walked away, leaving Silas and Lily alone in the spotlight. "Silas, I'm really sorry. I promise I didn't know who he was. He was just a charming man that everyone was always talking about, saying he was a bad boy. I had no idea he was trouble. Please forgive me." Silas gently lifted her chin so she would look at him. "Lily, I believe you. But your choice put you and others in danger. Why did you do that? Were you trying to show off a bit? Being around someone like him, who is a lot older than you, could hurt your good name and make people question you." She started crying again and ran off to the guest house where she and her parents were staying. Silas felt confused by how she reacted to his kindly spoken words. He noticed the disapproving looks from his sisters, his mother and Lily's mother, who followed her away. "You have a lot to learn about the girls, son," said Bigfoot Wallace as he joined the Rangers, his dad and uncle. "But you handle the troublemakers pretty well." Uncle Lonnie put his arm around Silas and said quietly, "I bet before this night is over, someone will tell you what Lily has been up to. Just remember, even if she acts grown-up, she's still a young girl, and that can be tough. To make it even harder, she was her daddy's little girl. After he was gone, she focused all her feelings on the person who saved her and her mom and wanted to take action against those who hurt him. Like it or not, you two have a special connection. Even when she makes mistakes, remember that in her heart, she may want to see that connection grow into something even deeper. If you're not ready for that," he added with a grin, "I suggest you look for a place far away, because she won't give up easily." All four men laughed, and Silas smiled, shaking his head. "I'm worried that the college education we're celebrating today didn't quite prepare me for situations like this. Does anyone have some advice?" Everyone laughed, and Ben replied, "What advice does a young man need when the most beautiful girl around is interested in him? Besides being pretty, one of her teachers told me she's also the smartest girl they've had at Ursuline Academy in years. We all know she can win anyone over. My advice? Either get her a ring or listen to Lonnie." "Can you all stop chatting and get the meat ready?" Silas's mom said, sounding a bit frustrated. "It looks cooked, and we're all set to load up the serving table except for the meat." They responded with a cheerful "Yes, ma'am," and began working. In 15 minutes, they were ready for the blessing, which Preacher Robinson took 5 minutes to give. Families lined up, filled their plates, and found seats. The kids often chose to sit on the steps or porch so the adults could gather at the tables. A calm but nicely dressed Lily returned to eat with her family. There was enough space for Kathleen and Mary Jane to join her after serving. The plates were heaping, but there were plenty of seconds, and even those who said they couldn't eat more managed to make room when the desserts came out. Silas had read about long French meals during family gatherings, and for the first time it made sense to him. After about an hour and a half, Silas suggested starting the cleanup when Ben Wallace climbed up on a bench under the big oak tree and called for attention in a loud voice. When some on the edges didn't hear, Bigfoot roared for quiet, and it worked. "We're here to celebrate a young man we all know and are proud of, Mr. Silas Carr, for earning his university degree. Let's start with a round of applause for him, and then we can share some stories about our friend." The applause stopped when Silas finally stood up to acknowledge it and said thank you to everyone. Ben continued, "Most of you know about his adventures in this area. There's the incident with Josiah Hayes and his friends after the tragedy involving Professor Thompson and the situation with his wife, Gwen." He nodded toward Gwen, who waved. Josiah's father, one-armed Elijah, was angry and brought his group right here, demanding they hand over the one who confronted his son. All the men were with me, off looking for him and the others. Silas faced him, and when he wouldn't back down, Silas took action. The good people here helped when things got rough, and the only survivor was the son Jefferson, who chose not to fight back against the boys and women. He is now one of Silas's closest friends, and missed this gathering because he is on his honeymoon in Mexico. There was loud applause again, which continued until Silas stood up, raised his hands, and said, "I didn't do any more during the Hayes gang incident than Samuel over there, or my mom, sisters, brothers, or the other women and children who stood strong. Everyone did their part, and they were brave, just like Miss Lily Thompson, who was only 14 when we faced Josiah Hayes and his men. She is an excellent shot with her rifle, and to this day, we don't know who among us took down Josiah. It doesn't matter. She was brave and determined that day." This last comment about being determined made the crowd laugh, and Gwen stood up. "It's my turn. Yes, my daughter was strong-willed that day because she doesn't give up easily, and she always believes her way is the right way." After the laughter faded and Lily's blush lessened, Gwen said, "As it happened, she was right about where they were keeping me, and her confidence helped Silas arrive just in time to save me. I owe my life to her and Silas. But there's another part of the story you might not know. This part happened in Dogtown when we went to get supplies and inform the sheriff about what happened." From the back, a man yelled, "Oh, I was there at the general store, and I can support what she's about to share, even if it sounds hard to believe." "Thank you, John. It does seem hard to believe that an 18-year-old would stand up to a dangerous man with 2 guns. But when the man called Silas a liar and a coward, that's exactly what happened. Silas showed a level of control that we rarely see from anyone, regardless of their age. The man reached for his pistol, but he was facing a loaded gun. Silas could have shot him and no one would have said a word. Instead, he made him drop his guns and leave." John stood up in the back and shouted, "Fastest draw I've ever seen. That old peacemaker was steady in his hand. Clyde knew he was in trouble, and like Gwen said, most people would have acted differently. But Silas made him face the situation and drop his gun belts. He's a hero in Dogtown." Gwen smiled, thanked John, and continued, "Of course, our story is easier to believe now than it was a few hours ago before you witnessed his bravery firsthand. But beyond his courage and his education, he has a sharp mind, excellent character, and a strong desire to see justice done. We should all rest easier now, knowing he will be in Austin, working to fix the mistakes made by past leaders in the last 10 years and helping to set a better path for Texas in the future." The applause went on until Ben announced he had some stories to share, and then everyone became quiet. You all know about his degree, which we are here to celebrate, but let's take a moment to honor not just the scholar but the man. You may not know this, but Silas rode with the Rangers 3 times while at university. The first time, there were just 3 of us chasing 5 rustlers, one of whom was a well-known outlaw. Although we never met him, we did find the cattle and 3 rustlers near Lampasas. Silas was supposed to watch over us while we approached, but they spotted us and rode their horses down a canyon right into Silas, who had set a rope across the trail between 2 trees. They stopped, and he sat on his horse ready to catch them. They raised their hands in surrender, and we were able to arrest them. The next time, we traveled to Gonzales to help with the Sutton-Taylor feud. It was right after Willie Sutton and Gabriel Slaughter were shot while waiting for a boat at Indianola, and tensions were high. We were tasked with stopping the violence, and we did for a time. Silas first spoke with Rube Brown, the leader of the Sutton side after Willie's death, and then he talked to Jim Taylor, who led the other side. He got them to agree to a truce, and things calmed down for a while. But then, some of Jim Taylor's men, hired by John Wesley Hardin to move cattle north, were arrested near Hamilton. The Taylors blamed the Suttons for this, and fighting broke out again. We had returned home during the peace, and Leander McNelly and a large group of Rangers were sent instead. They didn't have much success either, until Rube Brown and Jim Taylor were both killed. After that, the conflict just faded away. Perhaps the toughest challenge Silas faced was up in Mason County, during what some call the Hoodoo War. The Anglo settlers in the north and the German settlers along the Llano River clashed over stolen cattle, and at least 12 men lost their lives. Governor Richard Hubbard ordered Major Jones and me to gather Company D of the Rangers, along with any law-abiding citizens willing to help, to ride to Mason, stop the violence, and bring justice to those responsible. Silas was the youngest in our group, but he stood strong in tough situations. From the Anglo side, we arrested George Gladden and Johnny Ringgold, who is now known in Arizona as Johnny Ringo. Ringgold was about to take action when two Rangers and Silas approached him. Seeing Silas move quickly, Johnny decided it would be best to go along peacefully. Scott Cooley, a former Ranger, had escaped. He had a troubled past, having taken the lives of several German ranchers who were involved in a serious conflict that led to the loss of his adopted father. Sheriff Clark and 3 German ranchers faced arrest, but no one was found guilty of any crime. Unfortunately, all the records were destroyed when the courthouse was burned down. Many difficult lessons were learned from that struggle and the Sutton-Taylor feud. Those who lived through it know that a civil conflict can be the most painful, as feelings run very deep. Silas witnessed this reality. Both sides believed they were justified, and perhaps they were, yet their actions against each other were unjust. Though he is still young, Silas has experienced much that many older people have not. I believe the wisdom he gained will guide him well in the future, and I am sure he will have a bright path ahead. One thing is clear. If he chooses not to practice law, a future in law enforcement is open to him. Everyone chuckled, but then Ben continued. Silas will work for the Attorney General of Texas, who is a former Ranger himself, dedicated to fighting corruption and standing up for what is right. So the person we honor today will be in a good place with a good leader. Now let's bring him up here with a round of applause and hear from him. I truly appreciate your kind words, Ranger Wallace, and your careful choice of stories. We had some adventures beyond those mentioned, but I was well looked after and I learned a lot. I'll be honest, I'm torn. I've just completed my university degree and passed my exams. Now, I've secured a job with an attorney general I respect. This role gives me the chance to help tackle the lawlessness in Texas, which isn't just about thieves. Some are also robbing the state of Texas and its people by twisting our laws to benefit themselves. The governor and lawmakers are working to change these laws, and I am eager to help law enforcement across Texas apply these new fair laws. However, part of me longs to return to South Texas to be with the wonderful friends and neighbors who are here tonight. My dad refers to this as hard scrabble farming, but to me it represents the finest people bringing life and nourishment from challenging land. This seems like a higher calling than being a lawyer. So let me conclude with my heartfelt thanks to those who raised me well and worked hard to send me to school, including these 2 Rangers and their families. They do important work every day. Let's raise a glass to hardscrabble farmers and ranchers, men and women alike. Silas lifted his beer, waved it to the crowd, and took a sip. The audience loved it, and their cheers echoed for several minutes. After hearing his words, Silas invited everyone to join him at the quad for some dancing to the band. He stepped down from the bench but let others move ahead of him. His mother grabbed his arm and said, "Hold on a moment, Silas. We need to talk to you." When he turned around, he saw Kathleen and Gwen with her, all wearing worried expressions. Kathleen seemed to be the one who would speak first. She cleared her throat and began. "Silas, we all care about you a lot, and we're stepping in because we care about you and Lily. You need to understand how deeply Lily loves you. She fell in love with you when you helped during her father's funeral. Then you saved her and her mother, not just once, but twice. That's why we've shared updates about her. She wanted you to see how she has grown." Kathleen, how does dating lots of boys and men show that she's grown up? Inviting someone like Bill Clement to a party, how is that showing maturity? Gwen jumped in. None of those things mean she is mature. She's 18. Silas, the same age you were when you went to university. To put it simply, she wants you to notice her. She is popular because she wants you to see that people admire her, not just as your friend. She invited someone she thought would make you feel jealous, someone older and more appealing, thinking that would grab your interest. It was her way of showing you that others find her special, hoping you'd think of her differently instead of just a sister. Silas scoffed. So she thinks playing games is the way to my heart? That seems very childish. I'm not ready for a serious commitment, but when I am, I want a partner with depth. Someone respected for her intelligence and character, not just for her looks. Honestly, I was much more impressed to learn that she is at the top of her class than just being the belle of every ball, which is all I've heard from you, Kathleen. With a sigh, Silas continued. It worries me that she can't see through Bill Clement. As an assistant attorney general, I cannot be with someone who is drawn to troublemakers or those with bad reputations. No, it's not just about her poor choice in friends. She simply isn't the grounded and focused person I need in my life right now. She flits around like a butterfly instead of being more steady. Maybe one day in the future she will be, but not right now. Besides, she will be in San Antonio finishing her schooling, and I will be in Austin starting a new job. This means we won't have much time to be together. Son, I understand how you feel. I'm sure everyone does. But there are some things I want you to think about. As for being manipulative, that seems to be in the nature of women. I influence your father, Gwen influences Lorenzo, and we have both tried to guide you. So has Kathleen. It's how a woman can gently steer a man without any conflict. It's not surprising that Lily, who is smart and attractive, would try to influence someone she cares about most. We all agree that your concerns are valid. However, we want you to see that she was just trying to show you her best side. After all, Silas, you are quite popular in the social scene in Austin, often with Lily's classmates. So, it's understandable that she would stand out among those young women in San Antonio. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, Mother Gwen. Kathleen, each of you made good points, and I see you care about me and Lily. I'll be honest, I stopped thinking of Lily as my little friend a long time ago. In fact, I can say without doubt that she is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. When you add her intelligence, quick wit, sense of humor, and ability to charm anyone she talks to, you get a nearly perfect young woman. I would love to take her out on dates. I would be proud to have her by my side anywhere. But it seems Lily wants more than that, and I don't want to rush into anything right now. She tends to act quickly and make decisions without having all the facts. Considering we would be 70 miles apart, I'm worried about her choices. I don't see how we could have a serious relationship with this situation, and that's what she wants, right? Gwen smiled and looked at Kathleen, who also smiled. What she wants, based on her writings, is to become Mrs. Silas Carr. It seems clear from your concerns that this isn't possible right now. But could it be possible in the future? I've shared my feelings for her, but maybe we should get to know each other better before thinking about a commitment, he replied with a grin. They all laughed, and he found himself in a warm group hug. Will you promise to be gentle with her? Nothing you could say would make her feel worse about herself than her own criticism, Gwen asked. Silas promised he would, and they went their separate ways. Lily was dancing with Samuel to Goodbye Liza Jane when they joined the group where the band was playing a mix of old and new songs. She seemed to have bounced back or was at least trying to look strong. Silas waited while Samuel helped Lily to her seat next to Mary Jane and then left. Lily looked around but quickly looked away when she saw Silas. He moved toward her, hoping the band wouldn't play ragtime, which was fun but not what he needed right now. He was almost there when the band began to play Molly Darling. He smiled, thinking how perfect it was for their first dance. Lily, would you like to dance? He asked, holding out his hand. She looked up, and he noticed a mix of shyness and boldness on her face. Well? He asked again when she hesitated. She stood up but said, I would, if you promise not to be disrespectful. His laugh nearly made her sit back down, but he took her hand properly and they started to dance. She moved with a grace and balance he had rarely seen before. She kept looking over his shoulder instead of at him. Lily, could you please look at me? I have a question for you. She turned her gaze to him, keeping a proud look on her face. He found it interesting since she started the whole situation, but he smiled and asked, I need a partner for a rally in Pleasanton next Saturday. Governor Roberts and Attorney General McCleary will be there, and the General has asked me to attend. There will be speeches, a meal, and later a ball. Would you do me the honor of being my partner for this event? Her dancing paused for a moment, surprise crossing her pretty face, but she tried to keep her tough look. Why would you ask me? You think I'm a terrible person? She said, but her face showed excitement and hope. I mentioned that you made a mistake by inviting a questionable person to the celebration. That was poor judgment, but I hope it doesn't define who you are. With a slight smile and a sparkle in his eyes, he continued, If being with me is too high a price to meet the governor and attorney general, and to be around important people in South Texas, I'm sure I can find someone else who would be more than willing to join me. Lily's blue-green eyes lit up with excitement, but she pretended to be hesitant. Maybe you should tell me more about your plans, Silas. That would mean staying overnight, and you know I wouldn't feel comfortable being alone with a man. One of my good friends from college has a ranch just south of Pleasanton. His parents have invited us to stay with them, so you can be sure nothing will happen. That's an interesting way to put it, Mr. Carr. Do you doubt that I can keep my reputation intact? She replied with a raised eyebrow. Silas looked at her with surprise. Not at all, Miss Thompson. I have no idea about your past. I just wanted to assure you that things would stay the same while we travel together. You have a unique way of speaking, Mr. Carr. Do you think that being part of social events means I'm not a respectable woman? She still raised an eyebrow, not fully convinced. Silas turned the question back to her. If I thought you weren't respectable, would I invite you to meet my new boss and the governor? Would I ask you to stay at my friend's home? As I said, your good status aside, I really can't tell. But if I thought poorly of you, I would not have invited you, or we'd have to share a hotel room. He added this with a playful wink. She pretended to be upset with his boldness, but she found the idea rather interesting. I guess I can overlook the way you spoke to me before, so I'll go with you. When are we leaving and coming back? We'll leave Friday morning and return Sunday evening. I can pick you up at the ranch. She smiled brightly, and it seemed like all was forgiven. The music stopped, but they kept standing in the dance position on the floor. The band began playing more recent songs like Red River Valley, In the Pines, and The Language of Flowers, before featuring a lively fiddler playing a traditional song, The Lost Indian. Lily and Silas danced to every song together, not leaving the floor until the band took a break. Even then, they stayed on the dance floor, chatting and teasing each other with a little bit of flirting in the mix. Their parents were thrilled about the change and joined them in dancing to the lively music. The dance floor had been crowded when the band took their break, and most people returned when the music started again. But Silas almost cleared it when the band announced they would play a new kind of music that mainly young people liked, ragtime. They began playing the upbeat tune, and the only two who stayed were Lily and Silas, as they were the only ones who knew the music and the complicated dance steps. The other young people watched for a moment, learning the steps, and then started to join in, trying to follow along. They were having so much fun that the band decided to play one more song. Lonnie and Gwen, who had been practicing in the dark, jumped in as well. This brought a few older couples to the dance floor, and soon it was half full. After that song, the band thanked everyone and said that was all the ragtime they knew. They then played another song from the 1970s, Home on the Range. That song filled the floor even more, and it stayed packed until the last song of the night, a recent hymn celebrating Christ's birth titled, There's a Song in the Air. Everyone sang along instead of dancing, and when it was over, people exchanged goodbyes, some heading home, others camping nearby, and a few who lived close by. In all the excitement, everyone lost track of Lily and Silas. They had slipped into the barn and climbed up to the hayloft, where they sat on a bale, watching the three-quarter moon rise in the east and chatting comfortably. Silas was becoming more captivated by the smart, funny, and beautiful girl beside him. He had dated many girls during his 4 years at university, but none had ever caught his attention quite like her. Just hours earlier, he had been upset with her, but now, as she laughed and tossed her shiny hair, he struggled to remember why he had been angry. Lily felt like she was in her own little paradise. From the moment she had seen him digging her father's grave, wrapping him gently in canvas, and inviting her to read from the Bible, she had been taken by Silas. Spending time with him while living with the Carrs before he went to university had only deepened her feelings. He was 4 years older and on his way to university while she was still a skinny girl, but she promised herself she would become the woman he would see as his equal, partner, and true love. She had made mistakes and faced challenges, but every moment with him taught her what he wanted and expected. Now she was about to spend 3 days and 2 nights with him. While meeting the governor and attorney general was exciting, it was not what truly mattered to her. Silas was the center of her universe. They sat close together, their arms and shoulders touching now and then, and she found it hard not to reach for his hand. A shooting star sped across the sky, and they pointed and gasped in surprise together. Silas leaned against her and whispered in her ear, "When you see a shooting star, you're supposed to kiss." She looked at him in surprise, afraid he might be joking, she kept her eyes open until just before their lips met. The moment their lips touched, they both felt a strong feeling, something new and exciting. It was like a spark, but they weren't sure what it was. Neither had felt anything like this before, nor had they heard of it happening to anyone they knew. This strange feeling pulled them closer until her lips parted with a soft sound, and Silas kissed her more. She had never expected to feel this way. Whatever she thought she knew seemed to fade away, and her body responded instinctively. When Silas pulled back from the kiss, he whispered, "You are filling my mind with so much, Lily." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders and knelt in front of her, pulling her closer again as he kissed her more deeply. She gave a soft sound, feeling warmth inside her as his kiss ignited a fire within her. Just then they heard a voice nearby. "Lily, Silas, are you in the loft?" Neither of them reacted right away, caught up in the moment, but they realized someone was close. They reluctantly broke their kiss, and Silas returned to his place beside her. He noticed the moonlight shining on her face, making her look even more beautiful, and he could see her lips were slightly swollen and her cheeks were flushed. Another voice echoed the question again. "Silas, Lily, are you in the loft?" Silas cleared his throat and said, "Yes, we are. You can come up if you want." He turned to the ladder and saw Kathleen appear, followed by Samuel. As Kathleen approached, she asked, "Did you two work out your differences? I don't like seeing you argue." But when she got a good look at them in the moonlight, she paused, covering her mouth in surprise. Samuel stood next to her, puzzled at first, then laughed, looking between them and Kathleen. "It looks like they made up, Kathleen, or maybe they had a little fun." Kathleen's expression went from shock to joy, and she started to laugh along with Samuel. The two almost lovers looked away, feeling a bit guilty, which only made them laugh more. "We're sorry. We had no idea. We just wanted to see how you were doing. Now that we see you are okay, we'll go back downstairs so you can carry on with whatever you were up to." Kathleen's words made Samuel chuckle even harder. "Carry on with whatever you were up to. Oh my goodness." Lily and Silas exchanged glances and joined in the laughter. Silas said, "Actually, your arrival was quite timely. We just saw a shooting star and shared a quick kiss that made things feel a bit awkward, and—" Samuel bent over, laughing, and looked at Silas. "You shared a quick kiss that made you awkward. I can see that, my friend. You definitely look awkward." Silas quickly closed his legs and blushed under the moonlight. Kathleen laughed even harder, and he felt embarrassed. Lily stepped in to help him. "All right, you two need to stop teasing us or I'll share stories about the both of you." Kathleen gasped, and Samuel looked shocked. Seizing the chance, Silas asked with a frown, "And what stories would those be? Surely you two have—" Samuel stood confidently, concerned yet unafraid. "We were going to share them tonight after the dance. You would have seen us dancing together all night if you had noticed your partner." "The very partner you were quite harsh on earlier," Kathleen chimed in. "The partner who claimed she was done with you once she realized how unfair you could be. Yet just hours later we find you doing who knows what in a dark barn. It seems your words don't match your actions, brother, and that your promises come and go, Lily." Lily gave her a look before turning to Silas, starting, "Silas, your sister and your friend have fallen for each other. I can see that for myself. No need to say more. I'm sorry if I wasn't paying attention earlier. Today has been a lot. So, do you two have plans now?" Samuel put an arm around Kathleen, drew her close, looked her in the eyes, and said, "I told you he would be fine with it. Now can we start making plans? Our parents already know how we feel, and your father even asked, 'What are your intentions for my daughter, young man?' I could tell he was joking because he and my dad laughed when they saw my red face." "As I understand it, Mr. Townsend, the next move is yours," Kathleen replied, raising an eyebrow. Samuel nodded. "All right then." He knelt down and took her hands. "Kathleen Carr, will you marry me?" In the soft light of the moon shining through the loft door, Silas and Lily could see both their faces clearly. Kathleen was as serious in her response as he was in his question. They both looked sincere as she gave her answer. "Yes, Samuel Townsend, my love, I will marry you." Samuel stood up, reached into his pocket, and took out a beautiful ring with a single diamond shining in the moonlight. "This was my grandmother's ring." She told me before she passed away that I should give it to the love of my life and remain faithful to her, just like her husband was to her. I promised her then, and I promise you now, I will always be faithful to you, for you are the love of my life." Kathleen pulled him close and kissed him sweetly, sealing their promise to each other. After sharing some kind words of congratulations, they made their way down the ladder and headed to the car home, where their family and friends had gathered to finish cleaning up and talk about the day. Samuel and Kathleen entered hand in hand, beaming with happiness. Silas and Lily followed in the same way. Conversations came to a halt, and everyone turned their attention to them. Kathleen raised her left hand to show off the ring on her finger. The room erupted in joyful cheers, and they were soon surrounded by endless hugs and well-wishes. Silas and Lily stepped back, delighted to let their friends enjoy the attention. Tears of joy streamed down Lily's beautiful face, and her lip quivered with emotion. As Silas looked at Lily, he realized he felt more for her than he had ever acknowledged. Though she could be a bit immature, she was also kind, caring, friendly, smart, and great with his sisters. Plus, he had discovered tonight that she had a lot of passion. For the first time, he recognized that with a little more maturity, she could be everything a man could wish for in a partner. This understanding must have shown on his face, because when he glanced up, he saw their parents watching, while others still congratulated the newly engaged couple. Gwen was with Silas's mom, and they walked over to him and Lily with playful smiles, followed by the grinning men. Gwen said, "Where did you two go? We were about to send out a search party. Kathleen and Samuel offered to look for you. We thought you might have hurt each other after all the arguing, but then you come back engaged. You both look. I can't tell if you're overjoyed or guilty. What do you think, Madeline?" "I think you both were off somewhere figuring things out and coming to an agreement." I'm not sure what those talks were about, but they definitely made Miss Lily blush, and my son suddenly seems very protective of her. "Augustus, Lorenzo, what do you think?" "My brother and I agree that you both should stop teasing them and let them have some space to understand what is going on," Silas's father said. With a small smile, Lonnie added, "It's clear that neither of them knows what they've gotten themselves into, so maybe we should just give them some time." "Harumph!" Gwen exclaimed. "That means we need to keep a close eye on them. We can't let my daughter's name be ruined." "Mother," Lily replied with some confidence, "I have a chance to meet the governor and attorney general next weekend. Don't you think that's an important step for my education?" Without hesitating, Gwen responded, "And who would you be with while visiting Pleasanton for 2 nights, young lady?" Lily was taken aback by her mother's reaction and surprised that she knew she would be going to Pleasanton. "How did you know?" "Oh, it's well known that a certain young assistant attorney general will be part of Governor Roberts' group during his time in South Texas, but surely you're not planning to go with him without a chaperone." She looked at Silas, who was smiling at their exchange. "But, Mother, I will be staying with a respected ranching family, and Silas's employer will be with us in Pleasanton. Surely that's enough supervision for a short trip." "Oh, no, dear. Lorenzo and I will be going with you. We can't let your good name be at risk by being so far from home with a charming young man like Silas." Lonnie jumped in before Lily could argue further, saying, "Silas came to us first, as he should have. We were invited and agreed to go, thinking you would join us. But things got complicated when he asked you, and then your answer was uncertain, so we decided to wait and see what would happen." Lily turned to Silas with a frown. "You asked them," Silas explained. "Right after I came back to get you in San Antonio. I care too much about you and your family to do anything else." A look of disappointment crossed Lily's face as she realized her plans to charm Silas on the trip would have to be toned down with her parents around. Before she could say anything more, though, Gwen exclaimed with concern, "Madeline, did you see that look of disappointment on my daughter's face? It seems it's not your son I need to watch out for, but my daughter?" Madeline smiled and gently touched Gwen's arm. Now, Gwendolyn, I'm sure you remember being 18 and having a crush on a boy. I'm sure she didn't mean anything wrong. It's just tough to flirt when your parents are around." Lily turned red, showing that she might have had some flirtatious thoughts, which made her parents laugh. Silas smiled but wrapped his arm around her in a protective way and said, "I would never do anything to bring shame to Lily or her family or mine." Lily tried to act calm, but a sudden memory of their sweet moments together and his silly promise made her look disappointed, and the others noticed. Silas's mother said with a smile, "Maybe I spoke too soon, Gwen. Lily looks a bit let down by his promise to keep her safe." Lily leaned her head against Silas's chest and closed her eyes, wishing the laughter and teasing would disappear. On Friday morning, Silas woke up early, hooked up the buggy, and went east to the TC Ranch to get his 3 guests. He was happy to see that they didn't bring too much luggage. He and Lonnie only had 1 small bag while the women had tiny trunks. The car's carriage was great for the journey, this time pulled by 2 horses because of the number of people and the luggage. They sat close enough to chat over the sound of the wheels on the rough road, and the shade made the summer heat easier to handle. They all decided to dress casually for comfort because of the heat and dust, promising to clean up and change into nicer clothes once they arrived at the Robbins Ranch, which had 3 indoor bathrooms. The trip from the TC Ranch to Pleasanton was just over 20 miles, so they wouldn't have to change horses but would need to stop for breaks along the way. The 2 matching Morgan horses were used to the Texas heat, but stopping for shade and water would keep them refreshed for the longer ride, so they made sure to stop at every creek for a drink and rest. They arrived around noon, just as expected, and their hosts had lunch ready for them. They apologized for their casual, dusty clothes, but Mrs. Robbins smiled and said they understood. After all, they were ranch people from South Texas, not city folks. They looked just as casual, but without the dust. After a chance to freshen up, they gathered for the meal. Even though Gwen and Lily didn't feel their best, they still looked lovely, and Andrew, his younger brothers, and even his dad, Robert, had a hard time taking their eyes off them. Mother Robbins, who was quite charming herself, watched with a smile as she and her daughters admired the carmen. The meal of roast beef with mashed potatoes and green beans, all sourced from the ranch, was delicious. The conversation flowed easily, making everyone feel relaxed and engaged. After the helpers cleaned the table, following local custom, everyone headed to their bedrooms for a short nap. The summer sun was strong down south, and while the southeast breeze felt nice, it also carried moisture from the Gulf, making the afternoons both hot and sticky. When it cooled a bit in the early evening, they enjoyed a tour of the nearby pastures and fields of the ranch, which was quite large. The men rode horses, while the 5 women traveled in a big open carriage. The landscape featured rolling hills covered in grass, with groups of oak trees scattered throughout. The ranch had a stretch of land along the Atascosa River, where clusters of oak, Texas sycamore, and pecan trees grew almost continuously by the riverbank. To the north of the house, close to the river, there were fields of vegetables and cash crops. A special dam extended into the river to help draw water into an irrigation system for the farming. Silas remarked that their ranch was one of the most beautiful and well-kept he had ever seen. Lonnie, a former soldier who had traveled more than Silas, agreed. Gwen and Lily admired the land's beauty and usefulness, but they were mostly impressed by their nicely finished and furnished home, which had conveniences not often found in Texas. Dinner was simple and delicious, featuring strips of cooked beef, lettuce, and tomatoes wrapped in corn or flour tortillas. This dish, known as carne guisada tacos, was a favorite in South Texas. After the meal, they gathered on the wide porch on the south side of the house to enjoy the evening breeze and chat. Lily tried to find a reason to go for a walk with Silas, but nothing came up. She went to bed at 10, feeling disappointed. Another day with him meant only friendly banter. Her chances were slipping away, especially since she would stay at the TC Ranch while Silas would return to the settlement. Lily knew she needed to make progress with him the next day, or she would miss out on a chance that rarely came along. Breakfast was served at 8 a.m., after which everyone made plans for going to Pleasanton for the governor's rally that afternoon. Once those plans were made, everyone was free to do as they pleased. Lily took the chance to ask Silas for a walk, and he readily agreed. She managed to lead them away until they were hidden behind the barn. Stopping in the shade of a large oak tree, she turned to him, placed her hands on his arms, looked into his eyes, and said, "It feels like we haven't had any time together, Silas. I was hoping we could get to know each other better during this trip." He responded with a serious tone, but a hint of playfulness in his voice. Oh, I think we are getting to know each other better, Lily. I've had the chance to see you in different outfits and situations, interacting with people of all ages that you just met. I've observed your reactions to the Robins' lovely home, the river, the fields, their irrigation system, and their cattle. I knew when I came here that you could easily win people over, just like Ranger Ben Wallace said. So I wasn't surprised at how well you connected with the Robins. Over the past day, I've also noticed that you have a curious and thoughtful mind. You are always learning new things, which I really admire. Lily was happy to hear his thoughts, but he was focusing on her personality and intelligence. She wanted to explore the feelings they had shared in the barn. With that in mind, she took charge. She held his hands and placed them on her waist, wrapping her arms around his strong chest to pull him closer. Tilting her head back a little, she looked up at him with determination and said, "That's great, but I've been waiting too long for you to kiss me." He smiled at her courage, leaned down, and kissed her. It felt just as exciting as their kiss in the barn. She seemed to share the same thrill as she gasped lightly and moved closer. She was surprised by her own boldness. How could she be so forward, urging him to kiss her? Yet her feelings took over, and she forgot all hesitation as they kissed. Their kiss was passionate, and he held her waist firmly. She pressed closer to him, feeling a warm rush of emotions that took her by surprise. Although she felt a bit embarrassed about being so forward, she found it difficult to hold back when they were together. Silas gently pulled away, catching his breath as he looked at Lily, who was blushing and unsure of what had just happened. "Lily," he said in a low voice, "I promise to respect your boundaries on this trip, but I worry I might break that promise if we don't stop now. You are so captivating that I'm struggling to think clearly. But we must pause. I have plans for you that go far beyond a moment like this, although I will admit I might dream of it. Let's calm down and head back to the house before your mother starts to worry." Lily's heart raced, and she found it hard to catch her breath. She wasn't sure if Silas could smell her incense through her dress and undergarments, but she could smell it, and she thought they would be damp once taken off. She looked at him in amazement. How could this young man stir her feelings when she easily turned away from others? After a few minutes, she regained her composure, and soon they were walking back to the house hand in hand. When they arrived, they found out a visitor had come with a message for Silas. He introduced himself as Bud Wools, a Texas Ranger, and told Silas that Mr. Ben Wallace had a message for him and Lonnie. "Captain Wallace wants you both to bring your gear to the rally today. He has heard a rumor that some people opposed to the governor might try to harm him. There are only 4 of us traveling with the governor, including Ben. The sheriff doesn't seem too worried about the danger, and we've called for backup from San Antonio, but they won't arrive in time. Will you help us?" They nodded in agreement, and Lonnie replied, "Of course. How soon do you need us?" Robert and Andrew were also listening and offered their help. "We would appreciate your support. Please arrive at least 2 hours before the rally starts, so we have time to update you on any changes and discuss the security plan." They assured him they would be there and would come prepared. The new situation made the men and women adjust their plans to arrive 3 hours before the rally. Even though it meant being there in the heat of the day, protecting the governor was more important than comfort. The women traveled in a carriage while the 4 men rode their horses. Each man had a pistol with extra bullets, a rifle, and a bag with another pistol and more ammo. Silas assured them that Ben would have shotguns available if needed, so they did not bring those. Using shotguns in a crowd would only be effective if it were a mob situation, and this seemed to be a pursuit of hired attackers. What they didn't know was that the women had brought shotguns. They were not going to be intimidated and were ready if they faced any danger. The initial plan was to have a short meeting with General McCleary and Governor Orrin Milo Roberts before the rally, then spend more time with them at the ball. The Robins had friends in town who offered their home for the ladies and men to freshen up and change into their evening clothes. However, with the possibility of attackers, those plans now depended on the situation. Their first stop was at the hotel to meet with Ben and the other Rangers. The women were invited to enjoy tea in the parlor with Ben's wife, Catherine, while the men met in a small room next to the office. Since no one knew who the attackers were or what they looked like, the plan involved keeping an eye on the stage, looking for anything suspicious, and signaling each other if something seemed off. Silas, Lonnie, Andrew, and Robert were chosen by Ben and given badges by Ranger Wools. The train arrived exactly on time, and the 4 rangers and 4 deputies took their positions. The Robbins women, Gwen and Lily, found a great spot near the front of the stage, looking lovely as they held their parasols to shield themselves from the afternoon sun. The Attorney General was the first to step off the train, and the mayor introduced him. He reminded everyone of James Harvey McCleary's dedicated service to the state, noting his roles as a soldier during the Civil War, and as a legislator who promoted public education and local control of community schools. General McCleary welcomed the large crowd, and then introduced the former Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court, who was now the governor, Oran Milo Roberts. Governor Roberts was a smaller man with white hair, but he had a loud and engaging voice. He talked about reducing the debt and extra spending caused by outsiders, and the idea of selling some state-owned land to help build railroads and high-quality public schools and universities, including the University of Texas. He mentioned that construction was about to start in Austin for the University of Texas, which would welcome both men and women from the very beginning. "We have many smart and talented women in this state, and we need to nurture all our skills to make the most of our potential," he said, and the crowd cheered in response. He allowed the celebration to carry on for a moment, then raised his hand to signal for silence. As the crowd quieted down, he reminded them of his promise during his campaign to reverse the harmful rules set by outsiders during the Reconstruction period. He shared that his actions as Chief Justice and now as governor had upset those who had taken power and wealth by creating policies that benefited only themselves, and they had even threatened him if he didn't keep things as they were. He assured everyone that he would continue to work hard, unafraid, for the benefit of all Texans, not just a privileged few. The crowd roared in support, but Silas and the other watchers noticed a group of men among the crowd who did not seem supportive. The men broke apart and spread out. 3 moved toward the front of the stage, 2 headed to the back, and 1 went to the left side. Silas glanced around and saw the other guardians nod. They had noticed them too. Wools and another young ranger were standing right in the way of the 3 men moving to the front. Silas and Lonnie gently moved the people crowding the stage back a little. They did this to keep everyone safe and to have clear shots at the potential attackers if they moved forward. They concentrated on the immediate danger while leaving the other 3 men to the Robbins, Ben, and the 4th Ranger. What the Guardians didn't notice was a small man on the right side of the stage next to Lily. She saw that he had his hand inside his coat, as if he was getting ready to pull out a hidden weapon. She kept an eye on him while pretending to focus only on the governor. Governor Roberts finished his speech, asking for support for his plans, and then invited everyone to go to the park for free drinks and snacks. The crowd cheered again and began to disperse. The attackers saw this moment of confusion as their chance to act. The one closest to Silas took out his weapon and aimed at the governor, but Silas quickly drew his own gun and shot the man before he could fire. The second attacker had his weapon raised, but Silas's shot caught him under the arm, causing him to drop it. The third attacker in front of them was taken down by a series of shots from Lonnie and the 2 rangers. Silas quickly turned to search for more attackers and saw Lily strike a man's hand with her parasol, knocking his weapon away. When he bent to pick it up, she hit him on the head, making him fall to the ground. Silas then grabbed the man's weapon and held him down with his boot. During all the chaos, Silas thought he had heard 2 more shots from the left side of the stage, but it was hard to see through the confusion. Meanwhile, Governor Roberts and General McCleary remained calm, encouraging their guardians and accepting whatever would happen. As the shooting began, the crowd quickly scattered, leaving only the guardians and the downed attackers around the stage. Lily, Gwen, and the Robbins women stood firm, while the guardians took care of the injured attackers. It seemed none of the 8 guardians were hurt, but 7 attackers had been shot. The 8th attacker was still on the ground under Silas's boot. Silas glanced at Lily, who looked determined and still held her parasol like a weapon. It was unusual to see such a stylish and elegant young woman standing over the fallen attacker she had disarmed. Once things settled down, Ben confidently walked over to the Atascosa County Sheriff. "Do you still doubt the rumors, Sheriff? Today, your choice not to help with security could have led to serious trouble for the governor and many people." Silas had been following Ben. When the sheriff boldly defended himself and threatened the Rangers for putting the people of his county in danger, Silas interrupted, saying, "I will start my new job as an assistant attorney general on September 1st. My first action will be a complete review of the Atascosa County Sheriff's Department. I believe we will find links to these troublemakers, and then you will have a chance to arrest this man so I can take him to court." When Wools and the other two young Rangers went to the jail to take in the prisoner involved with Lily, they found a short resignation note with a silver star on top. California seemed to be drawing more attention. The gathering in the park began slowly after the earlier chaos, but the eager crowd returned stronger within an hour. Drinks were served, food was enjoyed, and the governor and attorney general shook hands with hundreds as they prepared to leave for the private ball. Around that time, a group of 6 Rangers from San Antonio arrived. After hearing what had happened and being warned about possible threats, they took on the security duties. The Cars and Robbins were sent home to clean up, while Ben returned to the hotel to change. "Good evening, Governor Roberts. May I present my guest for the night, Miss Lily Thompson," he said, opening his arms to embrace her. "It has been so long. You have become the beautiful woman your father always said you would be, and I hear I owe you my life." "Thank you, Governor, but Lily, you always called me Uncle Oren, and I expect you to keep doing that. Even though your father is no longer with us, I still see you as my niece." "Of course, Uncle Oren, I'm happy to do so. What I wanted to tell you is that my escort stopped 2 of the attackers, and my mother's new husband, Lorenzo Carr, stopped another. Andrew, Robert, and the Rangers handled the rest. I didn't do much. Without a doubt, my dear, I'm here because of their courage. However, they were armed while you only had a parasol. Your bravery shined bright today. Thank you, Uncle Oren. I couldn't let them hurt you, so I did what I could. But about my companion..." He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and quietly said, "Dear, I know all about your young man. His bravery is famous, just like his good character and intelligence. There is no need for you to support him." He straightened up, looked from Lily to Silas and back again, smiled brightly, and said, "Young man, it seems your time as an escort to events in Austin is coming to an end. My niece appears to have taken a liking to you, which means you may not stay single for long. After all, who would want to be alone with such a lovely, bright, and brave young lady ready to share a life together? If your wedding takes place while I am in office, and I suspect it will, I expect to be involved in some way." Lily hid her smile behind a fan that suddenly appeared. The governor moved the fan aside to give her a quick kiss on the cheek, and they moved on. Gwen then caught the governor's attention. "Oh my goodness, Gwen, you look even more beautiful. And who is this charming young man? I saw him bravely step in to protect me, but we haven't met properly yet." Lorenzo introduced himself, and the governor continued to shower them with compliments, just like he had with Silas and Lily, as any good politician would do. Meanwhile, Attorney General James H. McCleary warmly greeted his young protege and praised his lovely date. He took her hands, admired her, and said, "Silas once shared with me that he hoped to find a young woman with character, intelligence, and sound judgment. It seems he has found all that and more, wrapped up in one amazing person. But why would I be surprised? This young man next to you is very impressive. He has had many wonderful young women to choose from since starting at Southwestern, and with his usual good sense, he has clearly chosen the best." He looked back at Silas with a knowing smile and asked, "Am I right? She is your chosen companion, isn't she?" Lily smiled proudly. Silas blushed but held his calm. "As you say, General McCleary, she is indeed the best, and I am very happy to be getting to know her again. We were friends before university, but we only reconnected when I returned home, so our relationship feels fresh. She's just 18, but will finish her schooling at Ursuline Academy next year, and hopes to go to college. Given my new responsibilities, I certainly plan to keep our friendship strong, but it may be several years before we can grow our relationship." Lily was eagerly watching his reaction, nodding as if she agreed. But when Silas finished, she turned back to the AG and, with an innocent smile, winked at him. He burst out laughing, and when he could speak again, told Silas, "You keep telling yourself that, young man. I fear you might be in for a surprise. I'll set aside a few weeks for your honeymoon when the time comes." They moved aside, Silas looking confused while Gwen and Lonnie chatted with the Attorney General. Silas, it seems that both Uncle Oren and your new boss think we make a great couple. Yet you seem to avoid me at every turn. Why is that? She asked innocently. Knowing any answer he gave would either make things harder for him or be a lie, Silas took her arm and led her to the punch bowl. He hoped for a short break from her questions, but instead, he lost her to a group of her friends from San Antonio who crowded around her without noticing him. He stepped back and watched her interact with others, realizing two things he hadn't seen before. She was so comfortable in social settings, whether talking to important officials or her classmates, and she was incredibly beautiful. The loose curls of her reddish-gold hair fell gracefully around her lovely neck and shoulders. Her dress, with its golden embroidery, draped elegantly and hinted at her form without being too revealing. It fit tightly at her tiny waist, flaring gently over her hips and down to the floor. He found the small bustle the dress had unnecessary, especially since her jeans highlighted her shape. Yet, as charming as her appearance was, it was her enchanting face that truly drew him in. Her expressions could show joy, sadness, or even frustration, and that ability captivated him. He hoped that what he said to General McCleary would be true. They should stay friends while she finished her studies, and he focused on his new job. However, he quickly realized his plan was becoming less likely. He shouldn't have invited her to this gathering. Regardless of the reason, he should have kept his distance after her mistake of bringing someone unwanted to his event. But from the moment he saw her under the moonlight, he knew he was drawn to her, and when they shared a kiss, he felt a connection he couldn't ignore. He had experienced the company of many women, and the one who helped him grow from a boy to a gentleman stood out in his memory. Yet nothing compared to the impact of Lily's kiss. He wished Tilly were here for advice, and just then, "Silas Carr! How wonderful to see you!" shouted a voice he recognized well. He turned to his right and saw Tilly with her fiancé, Harold Johnson. He shook Harold's hand firmly and then hugged Tilly. "What are you doing here?" he asked happily. Harold replied with excitement. "We are big fans of General McCleary and Governor Roberts. We got stuck in San Antonio and missed the rally today, but we made it for the ball and we have a hotel booked for tonight." Silas was watching them when his date appeared next to him, offering her hand to Tilly. "Good evening. I'm Lily Thompson, Silas's date for the weekend." As they got closer, Tilly noticed Silas admiring Lily's beauty, and she felt a hint of jealousy. She remembered, "Oh, you were his childhood friend from before he moved to Georgetown. He talked about you a lot." Lily's bright blue eyes grew cold as she replied, "It's too bad Silas hasn't mentioned you, even though you seem to know each other." Before Tilly could stir things up again, Harold chimed in. "Silas left his horse at my fiancé's ranch while studying at Southwestern. He introduced us, and yes, we are old friends. Nice to meet you, Miss Thompson." With Harold's help, Lily's jealousy seemed to fade, and she returned to being her charming self. She took Silas's arm and asked if they wanted some punch and snacks. Harold said yes, and they followed Lily to the table. Silas frowned at her unusual behavior until he saw Tilly's bright smile and twinkling eyes. "What have I gotten myself into?" he thought. He didn't plan for them to meet, let alone talk. Yet here they were, chatting animatedly. This could end badly for him, as Tilly clearly enjoyed what Lily wanted to know about their past friendship. Tilly was playing with Lily's curiosity, avoiding her questions and making Lily more curious. Luckily, the governor stepped onto the slightly raised stage and gave a short speech. Soon after, the band started playing and the dancing began. Lily was not shy with Silas. "Who is that amazing woman? Don't tell me she's just a friend. I noticed how you looked at each other, and it wasn't just a friendly look." As Harold explained, she let me keep my horse at her ranch. She pinched him and whispered, "Don't lie to me, Silas Matthew Carr. I can see in your eyes that she is much more than just someone who let you board your horse." Silas was worried about how to answer Lily's curiosity while protecting Tilly's good name. Just then, Gwen and Lonnie came to help. "Honey, let me dance with Silas while Lonnie dances with you. We old folks will be leaving soon, and we want to have this dance with you first." Lily was upset and felt tricked, but she had no other choice. She smiled and let Silas go, stepping into Lonnie's embrace. "So, Silas, who is she? We overheard Lily and thought we'd help you out, but I'm just as curious as my daughter," Gwen asked. "She is, besides being the woman who let me board my horse at her ranch, a close friend and mentor. She was important to me, but that's in the past now. Her husband has passed away, and she is getting married to Harold in September. I'll be at the wedding. What we had is behind us. You might want to practice that answer before you share it with my suddenly jealous daughter. What you had may be over, but the feelings seem to linger. Maybe being honest would be wise, but I suspect you are hesitant to reveal too much about your friend and mentor. Think carefully, my son. Lily may be young, but she isn't naive. Harold joined Lily, and Lonnie danced with Gwen, leaving Tilly with Silas. With a raised eyebrow, Tilly asked, "So, my dear, who is this curious young lady, and what does she know about us?" "Unlike Harold, she knows nothing at all, and I want to keep it that way. It's not just because of our budding friendship, but I also want to protect your reputation," Silas replied. "Don't worry," Tilly said with a smile. "Having known you won't harm my reputation, and it won't harm yours either. Perhaps you should show her what I've taught you first and see how she feels about our friendship. Or is your relationship not at that stage yet?" Well, she seems interested, but I promised her mother I wouldn't push things too far during this trip. From how her mother looks at you, even if she is expecting, she might encourage you to explore this connection. She understands her daughter's feelings and won't get in the way. The song came to an end, and everyone returned to their partners. Lily had settled down, but still seemed wary. Tilly didn't tease Lily, but made her affection for Silas clear, something everyone except Lily noticed. When a slow song began, Lily moved into Silas's arms and leaned against him. Silas was lost in the moment, unaware of anything else around him. They danced slowly, and Lily playfully teased her partner, making him forget everyone else around them. Out of nowhere, a man pulled Silas's arm away from Lily and pressed something hard against his side. "Manny wants you to fix the trouble you caused for the Clement family. Come with us quietly, or your girlfriend will be in danger." Silas glanced at Lily, who looked frightened and was being held by another man. Concerned for her safety, he stepped away with the man but looked back at Lily, hoping she could signal Lonnie or one of the rangers for help. She appeared worried, but he noticed her taking a deep breath, possibly to call for help. Lonnie saw Silas leave suddenly and followed his gaze to Lily. He and Gwen, who were dancing nearby, noticed Harold behind Lily and the man with the weapon. Lonnie exchanged glances with Harold to signal their concern. He felt his hand move toward his own weapon when he heard Lily scream. He prepared to protect her while hoping not to harm her in the chaos. But Lonnie didn't need to act, because when Lily screamed, Harold quickly moved. He struck the man holding the weapon and knocked him off balance, sending the gun to the floor. When the gunman looked back at Lily, it gave Silas the chance to act. He swung his arm down, knocking the gun away as it fired. He felt a sharp pain in his side and heard the bullet hit the wall. In that moment of chaos, he grabbed his own gun and shot at the man before he could react. As the gunman fell, Silas felt a painful blow to his chest. His hand grew weak, and he switched the gun to his other hand, turning to see who else was attacking him. Another bullet grazed his shoulder, but he continued to fire at the figure standing outside. When he fell, everything went dark. Silas woke up to bright sunlight hitting his face. He felt dizzy and disoriented, with a terrible headache and pain in his side and arm. He slowly opened his eyes and found himself in a plain room with white walls, a place he didn't recognize. Carefully, he turned his head and saw a woman curled up on a couch nearby. She had red hair with golden highlights, and she stirred awake when she noticed him staring. When her eyes met his, she gasped and sat up. "Silas, you're awake!" "Oh, thank you, Lord, thank you," the angel exclaimed. Silas's cloudy mind began to clear a little as he looked at the angel, who he now recognized as his love, Lily. "Hello, angel. Where am I?" he asked. She jumped up and leaned toward him, stopping just short of hugging him. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I remember. You're Lily, my angel," he replied, still sounding a bit dazed. "Oh, thank goodness, thank you," she said in relief. "Yes, my love, it is me, Lily. I care for you so much, I've been so worried." "Where am I and why am I here, Angel? I don't remember much right now." "You are at the Santa Rosa Infirmary in San Antonio, my love. We were at the ball, and there were men with guns. 2 of them shot you. Oh, Silas, I was so scared when I found out they were connected to Billy Clement. My mistake almost got you hurt. If Harold hadn't stopped the one holding me, I might have been in danger too. But I couldn't let them take you away. I would have lost you. So I yelled for help, and you shot the man holding you. Then another man outside shot you, and you shot back at him and took him down. Uncle Oren is going to give you an award for bravery when you get better." The doctor entered to find a bewildered patient and his anxious girlfriend. He had to ask her to leave for a bit to check on Silas, who was healing well even while he was unconscious. Though the patient was confused, he answered the doctor's questions, taking his time. After the checkup, the doctor felt positive that Silas was on the path to recovery. Strangely, the doctor wondered if it was really his care that had helped him. 2 days later, the doctor decided to put a "No Visitors" sign on the patient's door. While he was getting better, too many family, friends, and reporters were coming and going. Even Lily, who had been by his side the whole time, wanted some quiet time, suggesting the sign so Silas could have a break while she stayed in the room with him. With some peace, Silas healed faster. They had the chance to talk privately about everything without being interrupted. Their bond grew stronger as they spent this time together. Lily insisted on helping him stay clean, which brought them even closer. Silas asked her to stop many times, threatening to call the nurses if she didn't, but she was determined. She was careful and attentive to his needs, eager to learn about him and their connection. It was later that he learned Lily had been taught how to care for someone and was encouraged by Tilly to help him. After each session, she would dry him off and put a healing paste on his wounds. He never questioned it, assuming the strong-smelling mixture was what the doctor recommended. On the 5th day, visitors were allowed again. Harold and Tilly were the first to arrive, and Lily welcomed them with warm hugs. They talked about the events from the ball, explaining how the attackers had taken him and Lily. They told him that every newspaper in Texas had written articles about his bravery in protecting the governor and overcoming the attackers, even while he was hurt. He had become quite famous, and updates about him were shared as soon as he woke up. People were now speculating about when he would be discharged, having survived another close call. He didn't quite grasp all of this, but decided to let it go. He had just done what he thought was right, as his parents had taught him. Next, Gwen and Lonnie came to visit, followed by his parents and siblings, including Samuel, his best friend and future brother-in-law. Everyone was excited about his recovery, making comments about how he had recovered against the odds due to a bad infection. He didn't pay much attention. It seemed he wasn't meant to leave this world yet. On the 6th day after he woke up, which was 10 days after his surgery, the nuns helped him sit up, putting several pillows behind him. He felt some pain, but it was bearable. A few minutes later, the doctor entered while Lily was off getting him food. The doctor checked on him and then sat down beside him on the bed. "Silas, I need to talk to you before you leave. First, it's a miracle you made it here alive. Whoever wrapped your bandages so tightly saved you from losing too much blood from your chest wound. Secondly, the bullet that could have killed you changed direction and missed your lung. I've treated many gunshot wounds, and I've never seen anything like that happen before." Silas touched the Celtic cross he wore around his neck, a gift from Lily that was meant to keep him safe. "Thirdly," the doctor continued, "your life is thanks to that amazing young woman who stays by your side except to take care of little things like cleaning up and getting food. Why am I saying this? Because we thought you wouldn't make it. The infections in your wounds were spreading quickly, and we had no way to help." Lily left for several hours that evening and came back with an older woman. She locked you in your room and wouldn't let anyone in for a long time, but the nuns could smell something burning and heard chanting. They were not happy. When the old woman let the nurses in, she left after giving Lily a bottle of a smelly mixture. Lily was to put it on your wounds every few hours. The nurses and I tried to explain that it might be too late, but she said since we had given up, we had no right to question her efforts to help you. We later found out that the old woman is a curandera, a healer known for her traditional methods and medicines. I was skeptical at first, but within 18 hours your infection had improved and your wounds looked better. I pushed aside my doubts and let her see you the next night. Lily applied the mixture carefully, and the old lady came each night to burn incense and chant for you. Each day you got better, and the worst of the infection was gone by the time you woke up. Honestly, it's quite a miracle that your wounds healed well enough for you to go home so soon. Or maybe it's not just luck. I'm meeting the curandera tomorrow to learn more about her methods. Maybe we can help others with serious infections using her knowledge. So, my dear young man, we all believe that God has plans for you. It seemed like he was calling you, and then you were healed. As for Lily, she's young, but I have never met anyone as wise, determined, and smart as she is. You should see her as one of your greatest blessings because she loves and cares for you. He placed his hand on Silas's uninjured shoulder, smiled, and said, Honestly, I envy you. You are 22, well-educated, and have a bright future ahead. You are known in important circles for your brave actions. More than that, though, you have won the heart of a truly amazing young woman. Silas, if you learn nothing else from your close call with danger, remember that life is precious and can change unexpectedly. Lily has told me you hesitate to take the next step in your relationship because you have everything planned out. Doesn't this experience show you that even the best plans can be overturned? Picture the next 5 years alone while she goes to university and you build your career. Now picture these same 5 years with her by your side. Austin will soon have a top university, or so the articles say, and she rightfully deserves that education. But can she not attend as Mrs. Lily Carr? Consider your choices, young man. You have the world at your feet, and yet you just faced the edge of life. Life is fragile, and it would be a mistake to not spend every moment with the person who has helped you so much and wants to be by your side. Lily came back to Silas, who was smiling and looking at her in a way she had never seen before. He gestured for her to come closer and gently pulled her down for a kiss that left her feeling a bit dizzy when it ended. He kept hold of her arm, encouraging her to stay near, and spoke softly. I knew it when I woke up after 4 days. You truly are my angel. The doctor explained everything, and I understand that you saved my life. It feels right because you already have my heart. He gazed into her eyes with deep affection and continued, My dear Lily, who has come into my life and given me a second chance, I want to give you my life in return. I can't kneel properly right now, but Lillian Alexandra, will you marry me? Her reply was unexpected. She fainted and fell against him. It was a bit painful, but he caught her and held her close until she came to. When she woke up, she apologized for the trouble she caused and checked on him for a moment. Well? He asked. She put her hands together over her heart, looked into his eyes, and asked, Did you really just propose to me? I thought I was dreaming. Let's try again. Lillian Alexandra, will you be my wife? Will you stand by me through... Her joyful scream and the answer she gave filled the room, bringing in a flurry of happy nuns and Samuel and Kathleen who rushed in to join them. They quickly informed their family and friends, taking care of that as soon as they got back to the hotel, where everyone, including Tilly and Harold, was waiting for Silas to come home. They had taken turns visiting and had even encouraged Lily to take care of herself by changing clothes, eating well, and shopping since she hadn't brought much when they left for the rally and ball. Even though they were tired from all the visitors, Lily made sure to bring the healer to meet Silas that night before he was released. She was small and fragile, but her eyes sparkled with strength. Silas and Lily spoke Spanish fluently, yet she used a mix of English and Spanish, sharing words they had never heard before to describe the ingredients in her remedies. When they asked about the names, she said that the Ancient Ones had passed this knowledge down from long before others arrived in this land. It was her sacred duty, she explained, to use what she learned for good and to share her wisdom with anyone she recognized as a healer. She was teaching Dr. Sanchez, along with a young man and a girl who had special abilities. She told Silas that she saw the goodness in Lily when she came to ask for help, and so she joined them. When she first found him on the bed, he was very weak, but when she laid her hands on him and called for support, she felt a strong response from those she reached out to. She said that spirits from another realm had saved him from serious harm, thanks to the Celtic cross he wore. However, those spirits could not cure him from the infection. That required the herbal remedies she used. The spirits of her ancestors helped guide her in her efforts to save his life. She believed the protection he received from his own ancestors, along with hers, meant he was chosen to do good in the world. He was meant to help those in need, stand up for the vulnerable, listen to the wisdom of the past, and uncover the mysteries around him. Her words brought him comfort and inspired him to think deeply. Together with Lily, they talked for hours. The tiny healer spoke of a grand culture that was destroyed by those who called themselves Aztecs. She described shining cities with tall pyramids, places where people studied the stars, and monuments made to guide the visitors who taught her ancestors to be thinkers and explorers. She talked about the lost skills of observation and communication, which were fading over time. People had built shelters that kept them from the natural world around them. She encouraged him to visit one of her people's sacred sites, to open his mind, to seek knowledge, and to pay attention to the lessons the world offers. She had done everything she could for him, but he needed to be open to the guidance of the spirits. She advised him to take time each day to clear his mind and be aware of his surroundings, to seek inspiration, and to feel connected to nature and all living things, using both his mind and his special abilities. There were others in need of her help the next day, but before she left, she taught them a chant to help them see beyond the surface. She blessed them, smiled, and promised she would be at their wedding, though they might not see her. Then she faded away. Feeling drained from the intense experience, Silas moved to the edge of the bed and invited Lily to lie down next to him and rest. Tomorrow, he would be able to go home, and they would need to be strong for that. Lily fit perfectly in his arms, and even though they felt some closeness, they quickly fell asleep. Luckily, a caring nurse found them and woke them up before anyone else arrived. This was good, because reporters were coming to talk to him before his release, and it would have caused a stir if they had found them together. Silas was declared ready to travel back to Carr Settlement, but he was warned to take it easy and recover his strength before returning to his normal activities. 3 reporters were there to ask him and his doctor about his recovery, and they also wanted to interview Lily again about her bravery. After a while, the doctor sent the reporters away, saying Silas needed to go home and rest. Silas and Lily sat in the back of the carriage, which was driven by his father. Lonnie sat in the front too, both keeping a watchful presence. "Silas, you'll be happy to know that Ben found out Manon Clement is now in McCulloch County, raising cattle or possibly taking them. The Frontier Brigade in that area is keeping an eye on him and on anyone who visits him. Now that they know he holds a grudge against you, they'll be more careful in stopping and questioning them. Billy Clement is in California like he promised. Still, we, the Rangers and the new sheriff in Atascosa County, need to stay alert since there are still Clement relatives and friends nearby." With Silas resting on pillows and being supported by the attentive Lily, they stopped a few times to stretch and make him comfortable. After some time, they reached Carr Settlement. The townsfolk were there to greet him, but instead of stopping at the front, his father drove around to the back where there was a guest cabin they had built. Silas looked puzzled, but his father explained, "Your fiancé thinks you will recover faster in the cabin because you won't be disturbed by the busy house." Though his father looked serious, his eyes seemed to twinkle as if he found something amusing. Silas turned to Uncle Lonnie, who was smiling widely. Then he looked at Lily, who was blushing, and Lonnie said, "Let me help you down, Silas. Lily has convinced us this is the best place for you while you are getting better." The crowd had followed them around back, and family and friends gathered near the wagon. Lily stepped down with help from Samuel and waited to assist Silas. When Silas was ready, it was Samuel who helped him down. Lily frowned but quickly took his arm and tried to lead him to the cabin. "Just a moment, sweetheart. I want to greet everyone and hug my mother and sisters." Lily stayed close, allowing the hugs and handshakes only after cautioning everyone to be gentle because he was still healing. Silas was puzzled by her strong insistence. They had shared many hugs before, far more passionately than his mother and friends were likely to do. He had taken some medicine to help ease the pain he might feel on the journey, and more was given for the coming weeks. Yet, despite Lily's fierce warning, he felt little discomfort. Looking at Lily, he understood. She was fiercely protective of him. Gwen gave everyone else a chance before hugging him herself, holding him tightly, her growing belly against him. She pulled back, looked him over, frowned, and cheerfully said, "Oh, Lily, it seems Silas has recovered enough to stay in his room in the house. The cabin is too far for him to walk for meals, and what if he needs help while you are gone? Maybe Lonnie and I should stay here. Silas can rest in his room, and you can be with Kathleen. You two can help each other plan the weddings." Lily looked shocked. She shot her mother an icy stare and replied angrily, "Mother, he needs to be in the cabin where I can take care of him properly." Lonnie and his brother were the first to laugh, soon joined by Silas's mother and sisters, Samuel, and then several other adults. Gwen stepped over and hugged her daughter, saying, "I'm sorry. You are just so protective I had to say it." Lily took a deep breath and smiled. "Maybe I am, Mother. Taking care of him has been my job for over 2 weeks, and I want to make sure he gets better." "You won't want to stop, darling. We understand, but you make it easy for us to tease you." It was perhaps the fresh air, or the extra walking to and from the house, or maybe Lily's ongoing help that made him feel better in so many ways. Whatever the reason, Silas was getting better quickly. Being around people, having visitors, and enjoying interesting conversations seemed to lift his spirits and boost his energy. On the third night, when Lily started to dry him after his bath, he took her in his arms, kissed her gently, and whispered, "It's time I show you my appreciation for everything you've done for me while I heal." He turned her gently, and with care, unbuttoned the buttons on her dress. He slipped it off her shoulders and laid it neatly over a chair, then knelt and removed her shoes. He then turned and filled the bathtub with clean water. While it was filling, he took off her underwear and placed it next to her dress. He had never seen her without clothes before. In fact, he had only seen what she showed to others. He kept his eyes away from her until everything was ready, then turned to face her. Lily felt proud of her appearance, but now, standing without clothes, she felt shy. She resisted the urge to cover herself as he admired her. She hoped he would like what he saw, but she worried she might be too thin or not quite right for him. "I never thought I would see a body as beautiful as yours, my love," he said with admiration. She felt her cheeks warm and excitement bubbled inside her. She wished to be closer to him, but instead, he led her to the bath, helped her in, and washed her as she had washed him. She noticed how he responded to her gentle touch, but she felt a rush of feelings deep inside. He focused on her curves, showing her care, and made her feel special. She nearly lost herself when he placed the washcloth aside and gently cleaned her with his fingers. She had explored herself before, but his touch was different and made her feel things she hadn't felt before. He guided her legs apart and touched her softly, bringing forth a warmth throughout her body. He noticed her reaction and gently touched her in a way that made her breath catch. The warmth spread through her, and she felt a delightful sensation. Just then, he said it was time to get out and dry off. He was very careful as he dried her, making her feel alive, but not overwhelmed. Once she was dry, he gently led her to the bed. She lay down and saw him looking at her with affection. She reached out to him. To her surprise, he instead knelt beside her and began to kiss her legs. It felt nice, but she wanted to be closer, and she asked him to stop teasing. He paused, just inches away from her. Lily and Silas shared a close, tender moment, enjoying each other's presence. Silas, though still healing, seemed genuinely happy to be near her, and they both found comfort in the quiet togetherness they shared. "Lily," he whispered with a hint of humor, "you might want to keep a pillow nearby to muffle your voice. I think half the town could hear us laughing." Lily felt a mix of embarrassment and laughter at his playful tone, knowing he was only half serious. As they continued to rest together, Silas spoke gently, explaining that while he was still regaining his strength, they would need to be careful. Lily listened, eager to make this time as special and easy for him as possible. They found their own rhythm, with Silas guiding her gently and carefully, making sure she felt safe and understood. With patience and warmth, they grew closer. Their bond strengthened as they shared a quiet connection, finding peace in each other's presence. The evening brought a sense of unity that left them both feeling understood and deeply connected. He learned that she was very sensitive and could feel joy in special ways. Even a pillow could not hide her strong voice when she felt those feelings. He slept better than ever, with her head resting on his shoulder and her leg over his. Though tired, she wanted to share more moments together the next morning. She quickly found her joy again, using the pillow more comfortably this time. They washed up again, separately, got dressed, and went for breakfast at home. When they arrived, they were met with smiles and light laughter. It became clear that their secret was out. With a warm smile, Gwen hugged her daughter and softly said, "Don't worry about them, they're just envious." "Well, I guess I am too." Now, I don't mean to intrude, but instead of living in Austin, how about you and Silas find a place in the countryside away from everyone after you marry? Lily blushed, just as Gwen hoped, while Silas squinted, trying to avoid everyone's amused looks. They both felt the awkwardness of being the center of attention. Most weddings at that time were either quick affairs or had been planned for a long time. Kathleen and Samuel had just gotten engaged and were preparing for a December wedding right before Christmas. Now that Lily and Silas had decided to marry, Lily took charge. She wanted to marry as soon as possible, and no one tried to stop her. They were too worried about her reaction if they suggested waiting. After the excitement of the past few nights, they all felt a sense of urgency to celebrate their joining. Lily decided that late September would be a perfect time, and everything started to fall into place. The governor was not only present, but also helped to lead the ceremony, alongside a minister from Georgetown and a priest from a local chapel where the wedding took place. The wedding was held on September 22nd, after General McCleary agreed to allow Silas to start his service again on November 1st, recognizing his bravery and injuries. The ceremony included different religions, but since Lily organized everything and Uncle Orrin donated to secure the chapel, even the priest didn't seem upset. Lily's matron of honor was her mother, who was expecting a baby. Two of her bridesmaids were Kathleen and Mary Jane, while surprisingly the third was Tilly. Tilly was honored for helping train Silas and guiding Lily. They spent their honeymoon in Mexico, starting in the historic city of Veracruz, founded by Hernan Cortez. After a week, they got back on their rented boat and asked the captain to show them the beautiful seacoast he loved. They traveled along the Gulf Coast, exploring the Yucatan Peninsula. They were amazed by the bright turquoise water and the white sandy islands in the Caribbean Sea. They enjoyed every part of their guided trip, but wanted to end with a visit to the Mayan ruins at Tulum. There, they met local people who looked similar to the healer they had encountered before. The locals shared stories about their ancestors. They explained the purpose of the temples and pyramids and told them that Tulum was once an important trading center. They spoke of the spirits that were said to linger in the old ruins and cautioned them to leave before night fell. Silas smiled and nodded, sending the locals away. Then he decided to camp on the beach, across the small lagoon from Tulum. The captain and crew chose not to join them, which was just what Silas wanted. Once they were back on the boat, the locals returned to their town not far away, and the sun set. Silas and Lily relaxed on the sleeping mats under the open sky. They felt free, talking and gazing at the stars. As they unwound, they embraced the peacefulness around them. That night had no moon, and the sky was nearly clear. The stars and constellations shone brightly, guiding ancient travelers. A gentle breeze brushed against their skin, and the starlight felt warm and inviting. Lily jumped a little at times when she felt something touch her, but she soon realized it was just nature surrounding them. The soft wind, the lovely lights dancing around them, and the quiet sounds all created a magical experience. It unlocked a sense of connection they hadn't felt since they were children. They discovered and rediscovered many things as they lay there amid the unknown. It was a dreamlike, enlightening experience. When the night faded and the presences seemed to drift away, Silas and Lily found themselves feeling a deep bond that was different from anything they had felt before. They sensed a new life beginning between them. As they held each other under the stars, distant beings returned, singing sweetly about the joy of new life. The next morning, when they returned to the boat, the captain and crew greeted them with respect. They noticed a glow around their sleeping area and heard the soft whispers carried by the wind. They felt a mix of wonder and fear. Having shared such an experience with the spirits was daunting for the crew. Thus, Silas and Lily earned their admiration. They returned home the same way they had left, from the lively seaport of Indianola on the Texas coast. When the city and seaport were destroyed by a hurricane in 1886, the community mourned the loss of life and property, along with the memories that were gone. Silas started his job on November 1st, 1880, and he was very successful working closely with two attorneys general. He focused on improving law enforcement in Texas, where some known criminals had become sheriffs or marshals. One of these was Deacon Jim Miller, who held positions as a marshal and a Texas Ranger, despite having taken the lives of 21 men before he was killed for the death of a former U.S. Marshal. Silas was also a caring father and husband, and their family thrived during those early years. Lily taught herself and finished her secondary education. She gave birth to their first child, a boy named Robert, after her father, and a girl named Edel, after Silas's grandmother. Lily was a devoted wife and mother, and while waiting for the University of Texas to open in 1883, which was just 6 blocks from their new home, she continued her education through reading and correspondence. The 2 years between having the twins and starting university gave Lily the chance to become well known in Austin society, just as she had in San Antonio. By the time she began her classes in 1883, she was nearly as famous as her husband. Being the most attractive woman in the room was both a joy and a challenge, particularly because her husband was somewhat jealous. This situation became more complicated when she began her studies at the university, where many young men and impressed professors sought her attention, even though they knew she was married. But that's a different story. And so concludes the tale of their great love, leading into the next chapter of their exciting lives. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.